Recording in progress on this end as well. Go. So we're on Anuradha today. That's correct, right? Well, I'm studying everything all over the place. I keep thinking I'm gonna get confused eventually and start trying to teach the wrong nakshatra. But here we go, Anuradha. Anuradha's, I don't know what to think about this. Anuradha, I really like Anuradha in a way, but in another way, I kind of don't get Anuradha. It seems to be a funny thing going on in Scorpio here between Anuradha and Jyeshta. And I'm a very strong Jyeshta type person. So you're excited to get to your nakshatras, and it's like my Jyeshta's next, man.
I'm excited to hear your gesture for sure, for sure.
It's probably, if you look at my research, it's probably the most well-researched of the nakshatras. But anyways, the thing is about Scorpio is Scorpio's known for crossing the bridge. It goes over on the other side. It goes to, goes where you're not supposed to go, kind of thing. Dives deep and all that kind of thing. Now it seems to me that Jyeshta is the hero nakshatra. And so Jyeshta is that sort of great hero going for adventure and the hero's quest. He wants to cross the bridge and go to the other side. All those great legendary movies where they all got to pass all those little tests kind of thing and go through some kind of a hell to get to the wizard. But anyways, Jyeshta is the kind of the hero energy. Anuradha, they're also crossing to the other side, but they're kind of the friend that goes with the hero. If you look at like what's his name, Merry from Lord of the Rings, I'm pretty sure he was
Samwise.
hmm?
Samwise Gamgee. Like the guys with Frodo?
Yeah, the guy who kind of hung out with Frodo.
Yeah, Samwise.
Yeah. Is it Sam? Yeah, okay, Sam, sorry. Sam, who is Merry?
Merry and Pippin are the other hobbits that take over Isengard, and they follow Aragorn, Gimli, and Legolas.
Okay, maybe I had my characters fixed up. I think it's Merry who has some of these placements. I thought it was the great friend of the hero. What's his name?
No.
Monaghan.
Yeah, it's Samwise. That's his friend.
Oh.
This is based on the movies. The books
Yeah.
have different names.
Is it Dominic Monaghan? Let me just pull it up another way here.
Oh, the actor, him is played by Mary. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, okay. So anyways, he had placements here. And I'm not sure of his chart, but I have a feeling me and him were born almost the same day, me and this guy. So it was kind of, I looked a bit at his chart, but I'm confused as to who he was. One of the interesting things in his chart and the comparison of mine is right about the time he went to go film something like Lord of the Rings. That was the first time I went to Varanasi. And so it's me and this guy have almost the exact same chart, except I'm Jyeshta and he's Anuradha kind of idea. And so I was off doing the big heroes quest, and he was kind of being the friend of the heroes in a sense. And the thing about Anuradha is it's very reliable friend. It's like really, really devoted sort of people. It goes together with, what is it, Uttara Falguni, which is Aryaman, and Satabhishak, which is Varuna. These three were often worshipped together. So it was kind of like you take that vow in Uttara Falguni, and then the energy of Anuradha here is sort of that friend that helps you keep your vow in a sense. And Varuna and Satabhishak is he's the one that's watching over. He's the one that, like, if you think you're in your bedroom by yourself and you break your vow and nobody's going to know, it's like Varuna is that energy that knows. He sees everything. And so these three work together, sort of, these energies, they're always invoked together. take the vow and let Mitra sort of help me fulfill it. And we all know Varun is watching over, so I have to do it kind of idea. So they were also like invoked a lot with Soma, which is the god of Migrashirsha. And they were also invoked with Indra a lot, who is Jyeshta. And so these are kind of like five of the main heavyweights actually of the Vedas in a lot of ways. So there we go, Anuradha. Man is a mystery. It needs to be unraveled. And if you spend your whole life unraveling, don't say that you wasted time. I'm studying that mystery because I want to be a human being. And that was Fyodor Dostoevsky. So there's some words of encouragement for us along our path. The power to worship, it's a star of success. And so it's kind of that friend energy that helps you succeed. It's that really Anuradha is kind of that friend who stands by you even when you're wrong. You know, even when you've been the idiot who've done everything wrong, but they're still there. And so you sometimes get like, is this where moon is fully debilitated? But anyways, you get a really strong debilitation when the moon is here with women, for example. Especially these are the kind of women that stay with an idiot boyfriend through thick and thin, and oh, he said sorry, everything will be all right, you know. So you get that in an abusive way, but then you'll also get like, you know, the partner's sick and ailing and whatever, you have to completely sacrifice your life to sort of help them. And that energy of devotion is just so strong with this nakshatra. Mitra is also he's also one of the solar deities, right? He's one of the Adityas. And so those are all sort of the solar lineage, you could say, in a sense. Just looking at my friend's chart here, I can't remember, I don't think he had any Anuradha placements, but all of his planets are in, or just about all of his planets were in these solar deity nakshatras. And he's like, oh, he's really chill, but he's like, in another way, he's like really masculine sort of a guy. A chef. Also, he's traveled all over the world, like kind of like me, travels alone, a lot of Eastern Europe. He speaks, I don't know, German and a bunch of other stuff. But like that's that friend energy as well. I found it funny that I was coming to stay with Andrew as when Anuradha was coming up, because me and him have a really old, strong friendship together. And so it was like, okay, well, there's one of my best friends. And the other guy, I might skip seeing him in Saskatchewan actually, but he was my first friend. We known each other since we were like kindergarten. So that's a lot of that friend Anuradha energy coming into my life here that way. So there's a staff here as well. You see the staff is really popular with the Ashleshas we talked about, the walking stick or something like that. But we get a staff as a symbol here on the lotus flowers. I sort of get a sense that the staff and the lotus flowers kind of go together as a symbol on this, because Anuradha has so much to do with the with the chakras. And because Anuradha, it's ruled by Saturn. And so it's that energy regulation. And so it's regulating the hidden energy, you could say, of Scorpio in a sense. And that's really what the chakras are doing. They're these energy regulators. They're taking the universal energy and stepping it down for us. So we get this kind of thing. When we think of the energy regulators, we see the rulership of this is like heads of corporations. You see a lot of politicians and those kind of people have these sort of placements. Funny tourists, lovers of carriages as well. Not sure. We'll have to pay attention and maybe think how the tourists and lovers of carriages works in. There's some transport there. Maybe that's when you're traveling is when you're kind of crossing the bridge, you're going to the other side somehow. And so maybe that's some of that energy here as well. Mostly it's organizing. It's a regulator, nakshatra. And so that's that Vishnu principle. It's organizing, it's regulating the energies Shiva's destroying and Brahma's creating. Very Deva in that again, there's a connection to the vow, but then in standing by someone, there's often a bit of a holier than thou sort of perspective to Anuradha people. They sort of stand up quite tall in a way, motivated by Dharma. They're always like they want to really do what's right, right? So your partner's dying or whatever while you sacrifice your life and help them. That soft, gentle sort of thing with the friendship. It's usually a very easy friends in some sense like that. Do get it's that sense of service that we get with all those Saturn nakshatras are going to have that. But here we get it also. It's quite Shudra, and so it's quite working and quite wants to give service, and even service in that areas like those Scorpio areas, like serving in the taboo areas, their work, because Saturn ultimately, well, I guess we'll talk about Saturn when we get there, but that it's hard work, it's that dedication, it's sacrifice. And so that all kind of has to come through this nakshatra. Despite all that, it's kind of, what could we say? Very soft, very mild, very service orientated, but still Pitta and fiery. And so it still has that sort of that heat of that we expect out of Scorpio, really. And I think I've mentioned this before, but Scorpio is kind of the lava heat, the underground heat, where the sun, of course, is that heat that's coming from up high. And so there is a sense of like wants to any of these fire element nakshatras, they want to raise us up somehow. They want to challenge us. They want to purify by fire in a sense as well, especially this one because it's so much attracted to Dharma and it's such a higher sense of Deva, a higher sense of being and purpose kind of comes into these people. So you get that, this facing straight ahead and level. I don't know if I haven't really talked about this in a while, but this is that sort of sense of it's either like looking up, looking straight ahead, or looking down. And so when we're looking level, I got a sense in some of my own placements on level nakshatras, and I was a pipe layer for a lot of my time. I was always working with the level, like any kind of level you give me, I know 100% how to use that thing in a sense. And so there was that like leveling things quite physically, but then there's that sense of like leveling with people. There's that sense of like when you're looking straight ahead, you're a little bit practical. You're looking at what's in front of you. And so it's good for the astrology as well and this kind of thing. Whereas if you're looking down, you're not really seeing what's coming up. The downward nakshatras, they can miss things in a sense, a little bit, because this is Saturn ruled, but it's not maybe as pessimistic as some of the other Saturn placements as well, because that's Saturn's direction to look. Saturn, even when you go into a, like I'm in a Saturn Mahadasha period, that's enough. I'll tend to look down more often. Even though I'm not fully ruled by Saturn, but he's ruling this part of my life. I noticed that when I was walking, because when you're walking on roads you don't know and uneven, all you're doing is looking down. And so on one hand, like I walked across India. On another hand, what did you see? Oh, I saw my feet and I saw the ground under them. In a sense, like there's long periods, that's all I kind of saw. So, but anyways, this nakshatra is it's looking ahead, so it has that. Still tamasic. It's kind of, I find it always, these qualities are so interesting, how it's sattvic and it's deva, but it's still tamasic. It's kind of inert. And I think there is some of the, maybe that possibility of a darkness, a depression, a kind of getting stuck also can come into this sort of thing. It's very passive, always a passive nakshatra. They're very passive sort of people. Again, we think of that sort of stereotype of the abused woman when harsh replacements are here, of course, but that's also that debilitated moon that comes in. So the southern direction, I was just talking to my buddy here and going through his nakshatra, and he's to the east. And so he's like, oh, so I should be doing my yoga practices at the facing the sun. Said, yeah. He said, well, I'll check. I've been doing that. So these kind of things sort of come out. So these people might like to face the south, for example. moving to the south for kind of help activate this nakshatra as well. I've got this twice Deva in here. I never noticed that. So anyways, mental note, edit the Deva. So say Jangiras, this is that heat again of the Mars ruler ship of Scorpio coming into here. And even I think there's a sort of sense of, is Anuradha with the whirling? No, but with this movement of the nakshatras, I think there's a lot of heat in any of these. Even you're an electrician, right? Any of these junction boxes where you're regulating the power and stepping down from that massive line that's passing through town to the little tiny wire. There's a lot of heat probably at those junction points where that energy is being regulated. Do you know anything? Do you have any insight on that sort of regulation?
Like there's resistance, and basically when there's high amperage that kind of goes through these points and it's not wiring, it can kind of create a focus point. Is that kind of what you're talking about?
Yeah, like
Yeah, because like the junction box or the transition zones are like a different material than just the straight copper, so it handles and dissipates heat differently because it's jumping and making the connections from one component to the other instead of being over the straight line. So because there's that slight air resistance and that change of material, it creates more heat because the components are handling the transfer of that energy point rather than just holding it all over the length of the material, if that makes sense.
okay, yeah, no, it does in a way, and I can kind of see how that also everything you said sort of does relate with this Anuradha, kind of holding that heat sort of thing.
Yeah, and then like you're saying, it's the assistant of the hero, right? Like Frodo, like when you're looking at his journey versus Sam, like Sam keeps everything together. Like Frodo's just a mess the whole time, you know? Like Frodo,
Exactly.
like Sam moderates all of that and kind of manages it.
Yeah, I kind of remember when I was a pipe layer, kind of that journeyman position, and I had helpers, and a lot of times there were these kind of young guys getting into the business, and I'm like, just your job is just to pick up after me and clean up after me and sort of, you know, keep focused on the little things that I'm missing, and you have to know that. Otherwise, just watch me work, sort of thing. But you get good helpers, and they really do hold everything together. Like what you need, you just reach out, and it's just there, and you keep working. And so they do sort of, in a way, it is that hero, is that electricity that's jumping. And Jesh is ruled by Indra, who holds the thunderbolt. So that's kind of interesting. And so it is that hero that's jumping from one place to another, where Anuradha is sort of holding that energy, and allowing him to make the jump in a sense. Because here's your tool. I've got your sword, knight. I've got your horse ready, sir. I've got everything's just there when you need it, when you've got a good friend. And I know these kind of friends, they really become the best sort of friends. These sorts of things. So we see also Sage Angira. So there is a lot of heat here, the radiant one shining like fire. And that's like the chakras are sort of shining and blinding and this kind of thing. We get the female deer as the animal here. Again, there's a bit of skittishness. I think it relates with that passivity of this position. Is it just to the male deer? Can't remember. Yeah, Jess is the male deer. And so you get again that pairing of the hero and the best friend sort of idea here. But this being the female deer, being the more passive agent as they go wandering, in a sense, wandering the world. This sort of again connects it with the Migrashirsha that's ruled by the deer, but the god being Soma, and Soma is that sort of inspiration. And so it kind of connects, you get that inspiration. We connected it with the gods and the Vedas, also that Soma and everything as well. And so it's very fascinating how these secondary qualities of these things will connect with the primary qualities of the other nakshatras. So you get this whole sort of herd of deer within the nakshatras, for example. Yeah, and they'll sometimes run with the cows, and they'll sometimes run with some of the other animals too. So It's kind of neat. So you get this Mausari trio. This is said to be amazing, beautiful flowers, beautiful fragrance, wonderful. They use it for headaches. It had something else, I thought. No, there's a lot of stuff in the mouth and tooth problems, detoxification, and that sort of thing. Got it confused in my mind. I was reading some other herbal stuff. But it's that pungent effect, and so it is a bit of a well, anyways, for Pitta people, pungent is often it helps disperse the heat in a sense. It helps to get it flowing. And so for Pitta people, you start getting some stomach acid sometimes. And so you take some pungent herbs and it helps clear it. So oftentimes you end up going and having a nice poop with the pungent, and it sort of breaks up any of that stuckness that occasionally puts Pitta off. No, and Kapha also. And so I think I mentioned this about Scorpio with the Vishaka, how it's kind of this blend of Kapha Pitta. And so we can see that we got perfect medicine here is in this Bakula tree. So got again a Pushkara Navamsha here. That's soft, gentle with the transits again. We look for things like anytime we're planning the auspicious activities, there's some that are special to the nakshatras, but a lot of it is just really like we look at the qualities of the nakshatra and decide what kind of day is it. And a lot of when you look at what's written, they're following the nature of that nakshatra. That's kind of going to be the nature of the day when the moon is transiting through that. And so then you look for these kind of soft, gentle, yeah, and just that easy friendship sort of thing, almost those mercurial qualities in a day, in a sense. And we've noticed that through a lot of nakshatras, there's almost a hidden planetary energy in some of these nakshatras, and that friendship quality of Anuradha certainly has a mercurial thing, the gentle, easy, just a passive day, not too active, not trying to do too much on these sorts of days. Good to follow some holy practice, do the things that are right, follow Dharma, try to find your own inner Deva, even if you're not an Anuradha person. When the moon is shining, we can sort of uplift ourselves and try to act a little higher that way. And nice for a grassy place. And so while here I am in the prairies, teaching my Anuradha stuff. But again, grassy places are kind of like, we think of these kind of open meadows, and there's a sense of like ease to them because you can look out and you can see if there's a lion kind of coming, you can see if there's predators, you can see and so you can kind of relax out in the open sometimes like that. Yeah, so that's the kind of day. We get into the gods here. I'm sure I wrote, yeah, he promotes the cooperation through treaties, governments, and so that's him promoting the things actually that the Falgunis were doing. Really, Purva and Anuradha really deals a lot with sort of agreements and stuff like that. And so Mitra really promotes those, the love, the friendships, good for like the long durable marriages and all that kind of thing. They get quite serious about that. It's kind of, they talk a little bit how Scorpio, especially when you read Western astrologers, they talk about Scorpio as this really strong sort of give and take energy. And I think a lot of that is that combination of the Jyeshta Mitra. So the Mitra is generally going to be the one that gives a little bit more, right? And of course, the hero just puts his hand out and thanks for the sword, and off he goes. And so there's sort of that, through the Shudra sense of this and the Saturn rulership, there's that sense of underappreciatedness also comes into the Anuradha people. So we get all this. Yeah, here's this will probably say it better than I did. Mitra's not violent. I wrote this song long ago. I don't know. I do my best. And I kind of do try to scan it before classes, but busy visiting, man. I got friends, right? I got friendships to maintain and keep them going, and right, all of that stuff. So maybe I
Yeah,
should.
this is your legacy though, Mike. This is what's gonna last after you die. Your friendships die when you die, right? So I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I get everything I have from my friends and the people I talk to and the nice conversations I have. So without that, I wouldn't have a legacy. I would have nothing. I'd be just a useless lump on the side of the road. So I have all these great friends. It's wonderful. Um, what am I saying here? Mitra representing priesthood and datum of the day, while Varuna represents the royal power and darkness of the night. Interesting, some of that day and night stuff between them. Mitra is the force by which the course of the sun is regulated, so the course of the hero is regulated, and Varuna is kind of the course of darkness. Vishnu's influence 3 steps. Okay. So yeah, you take a couple steps to, yeah, step things down. Right? You don't go from the big wire on the pole and then put a little tiny wire into the house kind of idea. You gotta do it in parts. And that's kind of Saturn likes to really regulate things step by step by step. And I think there's also a sense in the Anuradha, like it's really life and death. Like you have to follow those steps or you could die, man. There's a bit of that. And while you're an electrician, you know you have to, or yeah, you could die, man. Uh, that's the one thing I can pretty much build a house, but I would never touch the electricity. I wouldn't go near it. So now I guess I gotta make friends with an electrician. I don't know. Um, so yeah, we can see they're both sort of seen as quite young. It's a bit of a youthful energy. Again, it's that hidden mercurial energy, I think, in here. I haven't written about that, but I've been really noticing is that I've been kind of looking at the energy of this. Uh yeah, so I got some quotes here, a little bit from Wikipedia. I'll let you guys read that. It's probably really interesting. We could talk about it, but it's there to be read. I haven't had much of a chance to read these. I've just sort of added these passages about Mitra, Verona, these kinds of things. There's quite a bit on Mitra. Kind of goes on and on. The Arc of Triumph. That's I tend to forget this side of Anuradha. It's and it's really, really important side of Anuradha because I'm always thinking that sort of energy regulation is kind of my shortcut for Anuradha. But this Arc of Triumph is interesting. It makes Anuradha another one of these sort of gateway nakshatras. Um, and I think we talked about that a little bit with Vishaka, but Anuradha can really take you from one place to another. Uh, very quick. It's like you walk through a door and you're in a whole new world. And that's part of what the friends do for you as well. It's that friendship. Sometimes it's that person who just sort of takes your hand and says, oh, maybe you should be doing this career, for example. And they open a door and give you a job. And then you're like, wow, it's a whole new life in front of you. It's a whole new thing or whatever it is. Of course, with spirituality, that happens a lot. Of course, in Scorpio, there's a lot of it. It's a born again nakshatra. Ultimately, we talk about Scorpio as being this all about death, but it's this rebirth nakshatra. And so you get this illumination. And again, it's these nakshatras working together. You get that Soma, maybe that inspiration of Soma, that even, I guess, that inspiration from the hero, perhaps. You get that fieriness, that upward moving force, that purification of nakshatra maybe comes in very quick, maybe not as quick as Vishak shock like that, but we're still in Scorpio. And wow, all of a sudden it's a whole new world. You're in it's a whole new thing around you. And so that's really that arc of triumph, that interdimensional travel in a sense, where you just someone opens a door for you and wow, it's completely, of course, that can work in the other way, right? All of a sudden you're a CEO of, I know, 6, 8 figures or something like that. And wow, someone shows you what cocaine is and oh, this is pretty good. And bang, all of a sudden you're in a whole new world, right? A little heroin addict somewhere or something. And so that can transport very quickly. Again, that Scorpio sort of energy of this. Um, and so we sort of set this sense too. It's like what was that song, Garth Brooks, Friends in Low Places? And so there is this sense of with this nakshatra is you have to sort of, anyone that has this nakshatra has to be nice to everyone in a sense, because you never know. You see these stupid things on Instagram reels now. They set up these stupid things where the millionaire goes and sort of acts like the bum and right and see how people react. And so someone's nice to them and they give them $1 million. Whatever, this kind of thing. Or they're rude to him. The CEO goes and kind of acts like the customer, and the manager of his restaurant is a complete jerk to this, you know. And so this is kind of that energy of Anuradha. Maybe it's even that sort of Indian idea of the guest as God as well might be in here. And so you really have to kind of treat the guest as God, that you've got to be humble. So Saturn ruled nakshatra, so humility has to be there, because you never know when that, like, a homeless person suddenly could bring you to a new world in a good way. So the lotus flowers, really, when you start to look at the lotus flowers, they sort of connect with the chakras all the time. All the chakras are sort of these different numbered petals of lotuses. And I've never really made that my specialty. That's kind of the much more sort of artistic, anyways, much more artistic tantrics, you could say, really focus on like making these lotuses and doing the mandalas and stuff like that. And I should do more of that, but I'm busy writing, man. So I noted Radha, Lakshman, Hanuman here as well. Hanuman was most famous for his devotion. He got his powers, the special powers of Hanuman came because he had Sita and Rama in his heart. There's beautiful pictures of Hanuman tearing open his heart, and you can see it's all blood is going, it's all gory, like the Christ images I was seeing down in Central America. And the blood is coming, and there's Sita and Ram kind of holding hands in his heart. And it's very lovely. So there is that. And again, I think a lot of that has to do with that sort of that rebirth sort of image in a sense, like that. And then you get Lakshman. Lakshman was Ram's brother. I don't know how much you know these stories, but Lakshman was he was Rama's brother, and so he was a really devoted brother to Rama when Lord Rama was going around, and Hanuman was also that devoted friend when he was going to fight Ravan and ultimately bring ultimate truth to the world. And that's where he also, anyways, that all came to an end for him. So these kinds of things kind of come there. Radha also, she was famous for her devotion to Lord Krishna, really, really extra powerful that way. Xenia, it's not Xena, not Princess Xena, but Xenia, and she also sort of dealt with a lot of that guest friendship, that guest as God sort of idea, the hospitality sort of stuff. And I think it comes through a little bit that Mitra is also maybe the friend you meet on the wayside in a certain degree. Like if we think of the roads, and the energy regulating spots on the roads are like these gas stations or these rest stop kind of areas in a sense as well. And so it's not while you're moving on the road, you don't meet anyone because you're too busy moving. But as soon as you stop at a rest stop or something, you start to kind of meet people. So there's that here as well. Breast, stomach, womb, bowels. So again, it's that debilitated moon for women, especially here. But I think debilitated moon for men also sort of decreases their fertility to a certain degree. But again, the womb for women, especially, that kind of thing comes in. You get a lot of things with Scorpio, diarrhea, a lot of problems with stomach because there's a lot of sort of problems with process elimination, piles and hemorrhoids. Scorpios tend to be sort of the sphincters of the body. Again, these energy regulators, and this is, yeah, this reminds me, geez, I'm so glad I have all these notes to remind me of this stuff. There's so much in these things. But again, we're talking, this is in Scorpio, and so it's a watery position ultimately. But it's still, if we think of the flowings of the water through the body or the hormones or the anything, I talked about the anus and the sphincter there that's sort of regulating the flow. We're not just pooping ourselves as it comes in, right? And so there's a lot of those flow regulators also come in here. So we talked about the flow of the fire, but there's a lot of water. This is still Scorpio, a watery position. So we get all that in the body as well. So any kind of sphincters, even in the glands, some glands sort of secrete and some glands have a sphincter kind of thing. So you get a couple different sort of glandular problems. So these are obviously the ones that have a sphincter. Did I write about any of this stuff? Why do I know all this stuff and I didn't write anything about it? It's like, why am I researching stuff and not writing my research down? Uh,
Because you're the hero, Mike.
yeah, I'm the great hero. I need that. I need my friend to help me get through this massive research project. But that's why you're around. You're like
And
also me and you have been like the heavy, steady friendships, the duo through this, the dynamic duo of the
but
nakshatras.
I have a placement in Anuradha.
Oh, do you? Okay.
Mars,
Okay.
Mars is in Anuradha, so I'm like, oh, yep, this is all making sense. I'm seeing our dynamic too as well, so it's kind
Yeah.
of hilarious.
Well, that's Scorpio. We can just change things this class. We can just jump from one place to another this class. So let's do that. It's got portholes. So let's just make a leap.
That's what I do apparently.
Yeah, so that's interesting. The electrical stuff there too. Oh, and this is your Mars in the 10th house of your career in Anuradha. Of course. Yeah. Oh, you're the master of Anuradha. Guruji, tell us all about energy regulation. Um, right, my Mars is in Gieshta. And so yeah, it's all coming together for us now. Um so that's really interesting actually how that's playing out between the two of us then. So there's our Anuradha. I've got something else I think it's in my, let's have a peek at that. Look at all that Gieshta and the Ascendant, man. It's just, I don't know how I do it. But here I think I've got some Anuradha. No Anuradha. No Anuradha. Yeah, I always do. I'm the bad friend. All my friends are the good friend. And I'm kind of like, I'm the bad friend. Um, I've got a Ketu thing going in my 11th house too that kind of does that for me. But I am the friend who always comes around to visit. Like I see everybody. Eventually I come pass through and say hi and off I go again. And so that's interesting as well. We think like this is my way stop with friends as I'm traveling, and this is regulates my energy. They feed me. This is my favorite cook I'm staying with. Like this guy is a master with food and even like regulating my energy because he's the guy who like I don't get better food than when I stay here, man. That's can't happen. So yeah, that's that nice Mitra's energies as well. Yeah. I
It's
love,
funny. It's funny you say that because the friends that I go and visit, I cook for them when I visit them and I feed them, and they're always happy because my famous thing is noodles. So
huh?
everyone are like, when I go over, it's like, yo, you making me some nudes kind of thing. Like, so yeah, I go around, I cook for the heroes kind of thing.
Oh, very nice. Yeah, wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate that. Um, no, it's nothing like having like a good sidekick, a good wingman or something like that. I remember when I was a young guy in the bar too. I'm useless by myself, but if I had a good wingman, we'd be yeah, we'd know all the girls in the bar by the end of the night. Um, that kind of thing. So yeah, that's interesting. Here's Mark Twain. Mark Twain was actually one of my favorite authors, one of my first literary experiences as a kid. I loved his stuff, the whole Huck Finn and all of that. But there was also in his stories, there was always that really good friendship, Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn kind of thing. Um, that sort of thing. And then he also had like the Prince and the Pauper kind of stories as well. And that was that story of this transformation from the Prince to the Pauper. Right. So Mark Twain had a lot of heavy Anuradha themes in all his writing. But the proper office of the friend is to side with you when you're wrong. That's the most powerful energy of Anuradha. Nearly anybody side with you when you're right. And so that's it. He's master of the unwritten and unspoken rules that govern society. Regulate friendship, hospitality, the art of give and take. If we think of that art and give and take, that's like masters of karma in a sense. Sensitive to all those little hidden signals and all those hidden signs. It's almost like I'm mentioning again that undercurrent of Mercury that's going through here. But if we look at the hero that's in Jyeshta, it's ruled by Mercury. And so the Anuradha almost has that sensitivity to the Mercury, that sensitivity almost to the Jyeshta and all that electricity and that coursing power. And it's sort of like those great helpers I knew where I just put out my hand. I didn't even have to ask for the tool and it would be in my hand. And then I just drop it when I'm done and forget about it. And next time I needed it, it would be in my hand again. I don't know what they did with it. It's like magic. Um, so these really great helpers, they were really, really sensitive to that. And again, maybe that's that electricity on Jyeshta. It's that flow that's more happening in Jyeshta. And so it's kind of being regulated. And so the thing about Anuradhas is that also it's that place inside keeping score. They're regulating that give or take. And so if the hero is not also somehow taking care of them, and maybe the hero does it through inspiration or however the hero does it. But if the hero is not doing his job, that they're keeping score, they're adding things up. They know what's going on. You're not getting dinner because, well, you haven't done your share somehow. And that's also, you can think in some of that, like that debilitated moon here as well. It's that sort of nasty sort of keeping score that debilitated moon does. And they're not saying anything, but they're all adding it up inside and it's kind of building inside. Whereas something like Mars here is flowing, Mars is moving, Mars is a master of that flow of energy. And so that's where Mars is in his own sign. He's very comfortable here. And it's that sort of keeping score isn't going to happen. It's going to come out very quickly. Right? It's not going to sort of coagulate inside or whatever. It's not going to become that bitterness. Mars will really keep that energy flowing. That's what Mars does. So very good. Keep the electricity on for everybody. So I'm going to read this because it's so interesting. It's like, wow, this is great stuff. I love this stuff.
I wonder who wrote it.
Yeah, I wonder. It's amazing. It's really, really good. Yeah. All that karmic. Go ahead.
I'm just thinking like Frodo at the end of like Lord of the Rings. He's probably at home and he's like, "Oh, I can't believe I walked all that way." You know, like he doesn't think of Sam at all. You know, kind of thing. Just like, "Oh yeah, I did a great job there."
Yeah, probably. Yeah, and the hero does that sort of thing. But because they're keeping score, the betrayal also becomes, it's a lot here. That strong polarities of energy. Because Mitra's sort of, it's very giving. And so he's sort of like giving. And they kind of set themselves up for betrayal in a lot of ways, especially the moon here, right? It's that dark moon. It's like, it's kind of nasty. It's like the manipulation. I think I've talked about this. The one young Bubba guy staying with this old Bubba. Oh, he's doing everything. He's giving me everything. He won't let me do everything. He just like, if I want to do something, he just sort of snaps his fingers and gets somebody to do it for me. And I said, someday you're going to want to do something on your own. And he's going to say no. And you're going to insist. And he's going to say, after everything I've done for you. And that's a sort of moon and Anuradha kind of manipulation in a sense. And so again, you're not going to get that same sort of thing with the Mars positions, right? Like there's some power there that's flowing. It's not holding on to it, I guess.
Yeah, I felt that, but I always move it like right away. I move past it, kind of thing. Like I've never laid that on anyone. I'm just like, oh, okay, well, you're losing my benefit now. That's it. No
Yeah.
worries.
Yeah. It's like,
No
oh,
harm done.
yeah, $20 and I don't have a friend anymore. I'll pay that. No problem.
It's exactly what
Yeah,
happened. Yeah.
I know, exactly. So, um, so yeah, that's the Mars. It's just that, yeah, it's not a big deal. Um, yeah, so we talk a little bit about how the rich man treats the poor man and the poor man treats the rich man, and master slave dynamics, sadomasochist kind of dynamics, innkeeper, wanderer. It's like the innkeeper has all the power, right? In those relationships, but he kind of gives it to the wanderer when they walk in the door, and the wanderer becomes the master of the house in a sense. And that's really how the Anuradha energy like works in a nice way, and then they're both in kind of treating each other like the master of the house at the end of the day. But you get those really unbalanced relationships come into play here. The energy of Anuradha is like putting the warrior Mars in a room with the crippled elders Saturn. Saturn can't compete with Mars on his own terms, but Mars also can't compete with Saturn on his terms. The warrior expects their experience, and the elder respects the warrior in its highest form. Mars becomes a servant to Saturn, when Saturn commands Mars what to do. Yeah, that's exactly what I was saying about the innkeeper wanderer dynamic, actually. They kind of both see each other as a master in a sense. It's like, well, it's like me. I'm quite, and it's not Mars, I think, being there. I quite recognize that like I'm useless without that helper, actually. And I fully have, and so that's that sort of healthy give and take, or the healthy side of the relationships. When it's moon here and it's like afflicted with Rahu or whatever, um, that's when it goes really, really out of balance. Yeah, so poorly placed and afflicted and all of that. Domination, submission type things. And so you'll see that even sexually in people's charts occasionally. Very strong eighth house kind of Anuradha Mars, Venus placements, maybe. Robin, Batman, all these dynamic duo kind of things. The atmosphere on Anuradha is just after the destructive fire and lightning of Vishaka. Sure, one might have a kind of, oh yeah, that's the other thing they're doing. It's kind of like they do a lot of this stuff after the disasters hit. Anuradhas kind of come in and try to put things back together, help you get things back together in a sense. It's even like what the heck do they call that person when you go to Alcoholics Anonymous, and that's the sponsor, maybe? And so the Mithras can also be that kind of sponsor that way. But even like maybe they're going in after natural disasters and sort of reclaiming the land, redoing the land. In that Scorpio, the transformation, but they're coming in after the storm and kind of fixing things, putting them together, all of that. That unspoken agreement used to be at war. You went and fought all day and the big battle happened. But then at nighttime, it was that like everybody could just go on the battlefield and collect their dead. And you could even talk, you could be friendly out on the battlefield. It was fully like there was an agreement in place, sort of thing. And that's that Mitra energy also, that unbalanced or two enemies sort of getting together in a room, like Saturn and Mars kind of getting in it. So it's uneasy. But again, if they work with it well, it's really a magical placement. So you get a lot.
I often end up in situations where, like after a death, like a death doula kind of situation, where I find I go into like the grandparents' home. Typically, is what it's been like. Half of the partners I've had, their grandparents have died, and I've helped clean up the house because everyone else is emotionally overly involved. No one can get things moving. So I'm just like unattached to anything. So I just go in and pick everything up after the death, after the funeral, and all that stuff. So
Yeah, that's exactly the Anuradha. The Anuradha energy. It's so interesting how these things work out. And it is Scorpio, and so it is after the death, after that thing has happened. After the taboos happened, it's even like, I don't know, your best friend gets caught raping someone or something, right? and you still stand by them and you help them put the things back together. You can, I know that is that Saturn that's in the middle of the catastrophe, but Saturn's hard. He's cool. He's got it. Keeps things moving, just keeps the things functioning in a sense. So the mystery of human existence lies not just in staying alive, but in finding something to live for. And that is a lot of that energy is in Mitra. It's they really find something to live for, someone to live for, or anyways, quite that devotion's really amazing. It's such a superpower these people have, man. It's incredible. True devotion, when you say, did I write this? Let me just see. Is this what I'm thinking? Yeah. I write what I think I wrote here. So that idea of like, people always say they love God, but it's like, what have you sacrificed for God? It's like they say, oh, I'm in love with this person. What have you sacrificed for that person? What have you given for that person? And so there's a lot of really that really intense sort of true love almost comes through this Anuradha placement, because it with nice placements here, because they really do. If you love something, you sacrifice for that. You don't just say, I love it. Like, that's so cheap, man. You give something to God, give something of your life to God, give something of your life to, if you love astrology, give you something of your life to that. You know, if you love science, if you love art, if you love anything, if you love ice cream, maybe that's what I wrote. If you love ice cream. Yeah, it's like devote your life to ice cream if you love ice cream. Okay, well, then you don't really love it. You like ice cream, you know? And so it's these kind of this, wants that full devotion, and part of that ah, part of that Scorpio energy is really like they go into things 100% or not at all in a way, right? And so it's like you either love it or you don't. You're either in it or you're out in a sense. So it's quite strong like that. So that's you either love ice cream or like, okay, you like it. Like what Saturn, I kind of think wants that honesty, that truth, that sacrifice. And it's a Mars Saturn energy here. And so it's that sort of sacrifice through action. You really, I think there's can be a strong sense of like actual sacrifice of the body. I think we might see some of the what do they call it in the Christian line, where they whip themselves, but this really hard sort of tapas, these really hard austerity sort of measures. Again, it's not always a person that you get devoted to. You get devoted to an idea or a cause or whatever it might be. And then you feel you want to sacrifice. And again, when it comes to even God, how do you sacrifice for God? You suffer for God. And so you like, well, my life is good. And so you beat yourself on the back and I don't know, pick up a 30-kilo bag and travel around the world with it. But anyways, that tapas is really sort of strong, that sense of service, I guess. There's that can be that fear, Ramdas, regulating the flow of information, keeping his sex life secret for years and years, feeling like, you know, if anybody found out, it would be the end of me. It was a terrifying notion, and then nobody cared. Yeah, a lot of workday danger, safety type stuff gets involved with Anuradha, especially when you got Mars in these kind of places. They become really active to actively, like you talk about cleaning up, and you probably did the same on the job site. You walk on a job site and it's a bloody mess. First thing you do is you clean up the job site. Now it's safe, you know, and then you go to work, kind of thing. I'm sure you've walked on a few disaster job sites like that as well. Again, cleaning up after somebody else's mess in a way, cleaning after, even if it's God's mess, you got to clean that up. And it's Anuradha. I can't put that all on Anuradha because I'm the same. Well, I guess when I'm the journeyman, I'm just dropping the tools and someone is picking up for me. But if I walk on a job site and it's a mess, that's the first thing I do. I'll clean up, tidy everything up. My job sites are always pristine. Like, yeah, I was really crazy about that. Mars increases the risk. Where are we? We're into this. So we're an hour into this. I think we can get to charts now, right? Oh, sounds on vibration. Oh, that's it. Oh, no, we can't skip. This is amazing stuff. That whole idea of taking refuge under Buddha is very Anuradha, right? The devotion to Buddha. These folks very attached to their belief, idea, dogma. Oftentimes the people around, yeah, they're not following the same faith either. So it takes a lot of hardness to follow that path. The relation we see between things is not seen in the object, but is experienced within consciousness through the capacity to synthesize perceptions. That's interesting. That sort of sense of regulating, regulating consciousness, bringing it all together, synthesizing that perception into something we can understand. It's the cause and effect. A lot of cause and effect in Scorpio. If cause and effect are felt to be connected, as they must be, the dependence on one and the other cannot be other than the same sort of need as is felt by the conscious being. There is, in other words, an underlying intentionality on the part of the cause to give rise to the effect. And that's one of the things you really, when you start getting into Eastern philosophy and they start saying like these ideas like the cause is inherent in the effect. The cause can even like precede the effect in some case, because the cause is kind of always there. And so it finds the effect to bring the cause to fruition in a sense. And so that whole chicken and egg, what came first, the cause or the effect, sort of anyways, a lot to be contemplated on that, you could say. In this card, there is, in other words, an underlying intentionality on the part of cause to give rise to the effect. So yeah, it's kind of what kind of comes first in that idea. And I really like this idea of the synthesis of consciousness, proselytizing as well. It's trying to bring people together in that way. This is the place in the body mind where fears are remembered. Fire, hot. So yeah, this is very much that area. It's very instinctive reaction that, when working well, keeps us alive. Occasionally, as a system malfunctions, triggers a fear response to things that we actually don't need to be afraid of. This is trauma. This is also, in a subtle way, this is also allergies as well. It's that same sort of allergies is another kind of a trauma response, right? The body triggers us if it's some mundane thing is trying to kill us. And then the body almost kills us and trying to tell us that this thing's trying to kill us, and that thing's nothing. It's just well, in my case, it's just a watermelon. So we get this again. So it's an irrational sort of, the body has this irrational fear of watermelon. Right. And so we get those things in other ways. That's kind of what trauma is as well. The triumphal archway symbolized here is actually the gate in time, a kind of portal that can bring us back in time from one experience, the original trauma, over and over again. That's what a lot of trauma is. Like when it's really deep trauma, you just go back in time and you're reliving that. This isn't so bad when you're at war facing opponents who want to kill you over and over again. But it's also very easy to develop a false programming that triggers come off at inappropriate times, that post-traumatic stress. That's a lot here in Anuradha as well, especially if you get like Saturn in Anuradha, can really be stuck in those loops of traumas and things like that. Saturn in Anuradha is a pretty tough position. Even though he rolls Anuradha, it's still quite tough. And so he's really trying to, when Saturn's in Anuradha, he's really trying to regulate those cycles of death, really trying to regulate those cycles. And it takes a long time. It's very slow, there's a lot of post-traumatic stress in Saturn and Anuradhas. So they have to consider karma very carefully. Like I said, with your Mars, it's a master of karma position, a master of activity in a sense, which is karma. We sometimes encounter people, even perfect strangers, who might begin to interest us at first, somehow suddenly, all at once, before the word has even been spoken. And that's very strong. And I find maybe that's part of the Giesta thing with me. At that strong Giesta, I get people coming up to me all the time. They're just like, you look like you're really interesting. Kind of idea. And I think I look like a homeless guy. Um,
Those can go together.
well, yeah, they do too, I guess, in a sense. Um, and yeah, it's like a whole lot of different ways to see homelessness. Um, so Migdashirshas, it's across from Anuradha, allowing them to kind of mirror each other. So Anuradhas and Migdashirshas tend to get along quite well as well. And so I'm Migdashirsha moon, and so there's that Jayeshta. Oh wow, I gotta find. Oh, that's why I don't have a girlfriend, because Anuradha is the perfect woman for me, but Moon and Anuradha are crazy. Yeah, I get it now. Wow, it all just fell together. Um,
Mike, you're crazy too.
yeah, there might be that as well. My friend was just reminding me of an article I sent him years ago of one of my ancestors in Canada, who was this old magazine, The Beaver, used to be in Canada, and he was the most absurd character in Canadian history. It was the headline of the article, and that was one of my ancestors. And so I thought, well, that's some life I have to live up to. And so, but I don't think I've quite gone absurd in my life, really. But anyways, that's a different thing. Um, Crazy, absurd. I don't know. There's something somewhere in
I-
between the two of those. You're gonna say?
I'm there too, man. So like, there's nothing wrong with it, you know.
Oh, exactly, exactly. Um, well, I was voted. Maybe that's a Giesta thrill for adventure. When I was in like elementary school, they're like people didn't think I was going to live through high school. And then high school, they never thought I would make it through my 20s kind of idea. It was like, there's no way you're going to survive. But I have really good friends. I have really good friends. Really, I have the best of friends in the whole world. Um, so anyways, kind of goes matches well with that curiosity of Migrashirsha. I talked about the connection between all the deer folk, the deer people, kind of wandering together. For Hegel, absolute knowledge spirit cannot come without first a self-conscious recognizing another self-consciousness. He maintained the entire reality is immediately present to self-consciousness, undergoes 3 stages of development, those steps. The desire where self-consciousness is directed at things other than the self. That's where us tantrics are really working at. The master slave where the self-consciousness is directed at another that is unequal to the self. And the universal self-conscious or self-consciousness recognizes itself in another. And so we can even see these sort of stages of spirituality in a sense, right? Directed at things other than the self. That's that sort of tamasic energy. The master slave, you're looking at an imbalance, you're looking to change and transform and move somewhere more of that jasic energy, and then you get that nice sattvic sort of energy of universal self-consciousness. So it's very interesting. I love doing this research, man. I love coming back to it again and again. It's so fascinating. All that sadist masochist stuff. Have I explained in these courses that what I kind of learned through the acupuncture, the sadist masochist and these really heavy and imbalanced relationships? Because maybe I should talk about that. See if I'm okay. So I wanted to see if I was missing something here, but it was Dana just saying, "Oh, sorry, I didn't tell you I wasn't going to make class." Um,
But I
yeah,
think they should tell you when they're going to make it at this point. I feel like it's our class now, you know?
yeah. She clearly doesn't have any out of positions, maybe. But she does know she's been wonderful. She's been a long time and a wonderful friend and supporter to me. So I can't knock her for not making it.
Oh, it doesn't matter, yeah.
Yeah. But so anyway,
Yeah, it would be interesting to definitely explore the sadist masochist things in relationships because like on a side of things, it's like that's also tantric exploration, which is something that I'm into. So I mean, like we can definitely go whichever direction we want to in a way, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's well, I do notice it makes a really big difference who I'm talking to in these classes. Like I'm talking to you, right? So I know you're an electrician, and so we're talking even more about some of these construction flows of energy and things like that. And Dana's studied a lot of Tantra and a lot of mysticism and Kashmiri Shaivism and stuff like that already too. And so she's the kind of person I can kind of lean on a little bit when I want to get into that side of stuff. And so it's
Yeah,
nice when people are here because we get those different perspectives come up.
yeah. I hope she can start making it.
Yeah, I know we're totally dissing her this class. Mahadev Dana, we love you. Um yeah, that's her big surprise. That's how I'll know if she's watching the recordings or not. Yeah. So there's some, I don't know, there's trying to think of the Anuradha connection between our little sinister talk here. Um so where are we? We're at okay, all that Saturn and Scorpio stuff coming together. So really,
I've got an idea. So it's like you're this charge of energy, basically. You're this Gieshta, and I like hold it together, but I hold it together in how I know to hold it together. So you know that I know construction, so it helps regulate the energy flow of your ideas and how you communicate because I have a certain context of what I understand and what my life has been. So it regulates your flow of communication in a way.
exactly, yeah, yeah, and that's it's kind of that. If we come back up to where is it? This Hegelian sort of idea. Um, yeah, it's always sort of that. What is it? The top one. Entire reality is immediately present. Okay, absolute knowledge cannot come to be without first self-consciousness recognizing another self-consciousness. So through that recognition, whatever energy gets generated between us, well, this is what we have to give everybody. And that's like, sorry guys, that's what you get. That's what this
This
um
is the kind of space we can hold and what we can create within this space kind of thing as you and I interact.
exactly. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. So Anuradha, so fascinating, so beautiful. Yeah. Regulating, resisting. Oh, yeah, resisting death, resisting recycling, regrowth, rebirth, damage control, containing harmful substances, regulating flows, security, secret duties, slow death in a way as well, because they're resistant to that. Gives a hard shell. The, for the ribs of cancer, protect the organs of the heart. Scorpio is a hard shell protecting the organs of sex and elimination. So that's kind of interesting. Shocking realities. Okay, a bunch of stuff. So let's see what we got for these guys here. See a lot of, I think Robert William Johnstone might have been an engineer type guy. Edward Norton, I think he might have Mars and Anuradha in his ascendant or something like that. Um, but he's pretty hardcore. I would generally think of him as being more the Gieshta and maybe let's pull his chart up.
I see the Anuradha with him because I don't think he's the Gieshta Brad Pitt type, right? Like he's the guy that
That's
keeps it together, you know, like he's not explosive. He just keeps stuff together and he's kind of just consistent rather than defining.
yeah, yeah. I don't know. He did all those prison movies. I don't think I seen any of his prison movies, but to do those, he went and lived in these kind of max security prisons for a while. He must have been protected somewhere, but he actually went and lived in prison and really lived that experience. And that's some of that Saturn energy of this is crossing over to the other side. What was it? Oh, the Mars is in Gieshta, the Ascendant is Anuradha. So he's got a bit of both of those energies in him in somehow. like in the prison system, he's probably a really good friend to one of those big mean prisoners who kept him alive. But at the same time, so he probably has a really interesting friendship dynamics, having both sides of those in his ascendant. But he's got a very pure Chakya yoga with this Mars and Jyeshta. Maybe we'll talk about more of that yesterday. I also have Mars and Jyeshta, but I've got Sun is combusting my Mars. And so it takes a lot of the glow off my Chak yoga, you could say, my Mars power. But here he is quite powerful and quite willing to go on the other side and get those experiences, like go to prison and really experience what it's like on those things. So Johnny Rotten, also some Anuradha. Not sure about Johnny Rotten's chart sometimes, so I won't worry too much about that. But when I do look at some of these, like Sleepy Eye and Karsten, at least those two, they're not very nice guys with their partners, but their partners have stood by them through a lot. A lot. I don't know if they also get the best partners either, but I think there is a lot of that really strong sort of master slave sort of dynamics in some of these the relationships they've had here. Yvette, actually, she's like a big boss in the border guards in Canada, and so really regulating the flow of things through the borders and those checkpoints as well, in a sense. Kasam Soleimani, Brian Mulroney. I'm not sure how they were quite regulating, but you see a lot of really powerful people. Al Gore is here, Joe Biden has an Emperor Wu of Han, King Henry of England, Osama bin Laden, Louis Riel. Some of them are certainly revolutionaries. Joe Biden is sort of this hidden sort of revolutionary, right? They're bringing that whole left-wing agenda sort of revolution in. And so he's very much connected with that. Frank Sinatra, I've got a big question mark then, because he's all about I did things my way. He's very much more the hero figure. But there was still that sort of like group that they were belonged to as well. That might have had like its Anuradha person, its Mitra person, its Soma person, its Jyeshta person, it's whatever, all of these kind of things. But certainly you get guys like Eddie Gallagher, Navy SEALs, Osama bin Laden, that military, that really life and death sort of side comes into here. Yeah, I know a few of these people had some pretty heavy sort of relationships. Very, very heavy relationships with a lot of these folks. A lot of like imbalance again in the relationships kind of coming in. A couple of them are very psychological and kind of dirty, but some of them are well, again, I don't know the truth of some of these people, but I think some of them are quite nice. Really, really rich guy. I know he married a very poor girl kind of thing. And so those kind of dynamics came in. Again, Anuradhas are sort of, they're going to be, often it happens twofold. At some point, someone opens a door for them to show them a new life. And then later in life, they kind of become that gatekeeper that in a sense, that mystery of Anuradha, nothing builds up authority like silence, splendor of the strong and shelter of the weak. There can be no prestige without mystery, for familiarity breeds contempt. And so there is a lot of mystery in these Anuradhas. When Sun is here, Sun is a power source. And so when Sun is an Anuradha, that becomes a power source, that mystery, that sense of devotion, that all of that kind of stuff. And very powerful sort of friend usually comes in there involved as well. And so they're really regulating, well, the sun power. Mars is also another kind of power that's regulating that way, but here we're getting that higher power is being regulated. Loyalty to a petrified opinion never yet broke a chain or freed a human soul. And so that's Mark Twain saying we need to change. We can't just hold on to old opinions. It's not helping anybody. I love Mark Twain. He was such a good guru for me when I was a kid. He was wonderful. So here we go. Now with the sun here, we get Joe Biden, Indira Gandhi, James Garfield, Habsburg, Suleiman, corporate heads, Jack Welch, Dorsey, Ted Turner, like founder of string theory. So I don't know what I've got to read about Schwartz a little bit more. Ministry of Reconciliation, that Wakefield Balm, a lot of that kind of reconciliation, right? After the fight, after it's all, everything's been broken, and let's reconcile this. Now let's bring it together.
Joe Biden also like the ultimate vice president, right? Not the ultimate president.
Yeah, in a sense, but he's also, oh jeepers, he's also relied really heavily on the black and white, for example, the almost pushing the poles out to catastrophe. And so it's that sense of cause the catastrophe and then come in and clean it up. And that's kind of what was that great book? I got the name wrong, Catastrophe Economics, but it's not catastrophe. It's anyways, just kind of economics where you kind of cause a catastrophe and then you make money rebuilding. And that's been Joe Biden, and that's the whole Ukraine war is all about the Biden family, well, making money selling weapons to destroy, but now also to rebuild. And so there's those very powerful connections come in with a lot of these people, like it's interesting thing that I only know one person with the sun in Anuradha, and she's quite powerful person. And so there's a lot of that, a lot of power in this Anuradha, a lot of very powerful friends, Charles de Gaulle, popes, Pinochet, Sai Baba, Ted Bundy. There's that master slave sort of, what do you call it? The sadist. That sort of sadistic energy it takes to be the CEO, in a sense, that sort of sadistic energy it takes to be the biggest man. Anyways, I hate to call all Anuradha's sun and Anuradha's sadistic, you could say. That's not a very nice thing to say. And maybe it's more with the moon and Anuradha and some of these things, but really no, that the sun is the sun isn't going to compromise, right? The sun isn't going to kind of share things like some of the other planets are. It's very one-sided in the master slave, the sadist masochist sort of relationship. So it's very, very powerful that way. What can we say here? We've got a few. Ranabir, that's interesting. He has sun in Anuradha. And he's always making a catastrophe. But maybe he sells medical supplies, so maybe he's also kind of selling things to kind of clean up after a catastrophe that way. Shira Webinar, Shri W, she kind of she's part kind of at the military, but I think she's kind of an administrator, but they do a lot of like cleanup after military operations have taken place, kind of cleaning things up and getting the settlers, Israeli settlers moved in sort of idea, and then kind of benefiting from that catastrophe. So interesting sort of group of people. Lucky Luciano's here. I made the comment about sadists, you could say, but these are very sort of functional ones for the most part, right? These are the ones that actually get top position in a sense. Okay, Ted Bundy, he's a little bit, over the line. but otherwise Lucky Luciano's maybe a little bit over the line. But most of these people have really kind of held it together quite well, actually. And that's Sun in Scorpio. He does all right. It's kind of fire, and fire is there to a certain degree. When we get down to this third nakshatra, what is it? It's Libra rolled. Interesting. Because a lot of the names I know here are sort of, they're quite heavy travelers. But they usually have, there's a lot of them are sort of tantrics, kind of sexy tantric sort of people, loosely speaking, I guess. But again, regulating that flow of energy and that tantra sort of idea, really strong with Anuradha, really, the whole chakra system and the energy system, really gets influenced. Again, just more really heavyweights, Winston Churchill, Jacques Chirac, very, very powerful Sun for leadership, for power. And usually there's like a hidden power source for these people. It's like Joe Biden, the most useless man in the whole world, and he's president of the United States because he has this hidden power source of the Sun there raising him up. So these kinds of things. Oh, God's like, oh, interesting. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. There's a couple of those actually. Now I look. Insurance as well comes in here. Bill Gottslick was into insurance. And so that's what insurance is doing. After the disaster, they're going in and helping people clean up. So that's also, and in a sense, that's kind of what the friend is like to the hero. He's some insurance. You know, we're going to cross the bridge, but I've got someone here. I got some insurance. In a sense. And I think that's how Joe Biden kind of got his place as well. He's got some, maybe playing a bit of dirty pool or something, but he's got some insurance somehow. He's got some powerful friend that's keeping him up there. He's allowing him to get away with all his crimes and stuff like that. Like, it's amazing, all that stuff coming out. So I started really opening up this part of the research. I didn't quite do the research yet, but I've got the dates and ready to kind of research some of these Sun Mahadashas. Krishnamacharya, of course, was the great yogi. Really, it was his students that kind of brought all the yoga to the West. Bruce Lee also, we think about energy regulation, and so they're doing it in a very different way. But even Bruce Lee, he got to the West and all of that stuff. He had this sort of hidden source of power, I think, like good friends who opened a door for him. And next thing Bruce Lee knew, wow, here he was out in the West. Krishnamacharya was very similar. Actually, someone opened a door and all of a sudden it opened up the whole West to him and really changed his life. Ted Turner, I wonder, he was Turner Broadcasting, of course. And so that was, I wonder if that's not some of this sense of like you turn on a television and wow, you're in a whole new world all of a sudden. It just transports you to a new place. And of course they can do that, take you wherever they want to take you then. And so it becomes very heavy with the media propaganda. And maybe also a little of that insidious sort of who's the master and who's the slave sort of idea comes in. So that's interesting. Ted Bundy's got this conjunct his moon. This would be really harsh moon conjunction, I would think, because you got the debilitated moon, and plus the moon is completely combust. And so you end up with a Ted Bundy or a Lucky Luciano. Can't remember who this Joe Bungsund is. I'd have to look him up. Let's pull a chart here. You want to see any of these charts?
I don't really know many of these people except for Joe Biden and Johansson. So
Yeah. And there I am with no.
so
Oh,
I feel we
this one.
have been covering it enough, just on
Nice.
Biden's kind of perspective. Yeah.
No, I see Joe Bungsund. I thought he was a famous person, but he's someone from Weyburn, Saskatchewan. He probably is a worker boy bee like us. Yeah, he's got the Saturn as ascendant. He's a farmer. Yeah, there we go. Probably anyways, or at least grew up with farming culture. So that's Joe Bunksund. Wow, look at that sun, Mars, Mercury, all in Anuradha, Moon in Giesta. All in the 5th house. He's got a lot of probably really scary sort of investment type stuff like that. A lot of worry, trying to regulate, right? 2nd house things, the storage and all of that, trying to regulate communications, speech and communications. He might have some speech problems a little bit as well, because everything's really heavily burnt out. What else? Anyways, we'll skip that. It's no fun. We don't know. Kapil Baba, Jack Dorsey. Jack Dorsey again, this is the 2nd house, and so I think you got a lot of that and Ted Turner, that flow of communication, that flow of speech. So they're what kind of regulators of speech in a way. So regulators of free speech that way. So that's kind of interesting. I know actually. Oh, that's kind of. Oh, that's interesting. Michael Maw and Zach Henson. I shouldn't be saying their names, but Zach, Michael and Zach, they spend a lot of time with prostitutes. And I'm not sure about Michael, but I know Zach, he's really into the whole master slave domination thing. Shouldn't talk too much about him. You probably run into him in Alberta or something like that. He's in the same business, same work. Same, doesn't follow the yoga stuff though. Yeah, team leader, band leader, gang leader, safety leader, private security. So that's that 2nd or the 3rd house now. So that's that groups and coming in. The sun in the 3rd house kind of regulates that. But it might be regulating some of these things from behind the scenes to a certain degree. But I think these are like party leaders, James Garfield, Charles de Gaulle, they led their parties. And so through leading their parties, they got the big power. Founder of string theory. Not sure about this guy's chart. So we see a lot of that kind of, was it flow of communication and regulating communication? One of the interesting things about Mark Twain that way might be his, well, I don't know, they almost consider his books racist now because he would use this, he was a real master at that black vernacular and writing it and making it sort of legible and being able to regulate his communication that way. I think some of that maybe is working with the sun for Mark Twain and regulate the way his yeah. And then again, we see all that black and white master slave stuff sort of came through Mark Twain. That's all he's writing about. Jack Dorsey, that's kind of, he's really heavy on that sort of liberal left wing, sort of the Black Lives Matter stuff. Again, that was all sort of master slave sort of dynamics they were talking about through all of that. Well, that's all very interesting stuff. We got in the 4th house, we got the sun is really, what's he doing? Well, 4th house sun is going to make the home the center of the whole world kind of revolves around the home or the nation. But also then it's in Scorpio, and so it's very private. We see someone like Ted Bundy, and let's pop his chart. Because yeah, that's all in his home. What do I got for 2235 from his birth record? So I changed his, oh yeah, I changed his birth date by 10 minutes. I brought him into a Leo ascendant to make him more kind of a bit more of a sociopath, I guess. Because I didn't see him, because he's not this. Yeah, the Saturn, yeah, that put a Saturn in the 12th house, since that's that cold hard Saturn. In prison is 12th house sort of stuff. And then I think a lot of this stuff the sun is regulating in the house. that's the authority regulating his sort of living conditions, his living quarters. Um, and so none of these planets are going to give like, though none of these planets are going to be very comfortable sort of living conditions. Yeah.
Yeah, so and just curious as an interpretation of Saturn in the 12th house as well. Would you say that like Saturn is kind of your planet of self-care and what your discipline needs to be? And with it being in the 12th house, that he would lack boundaries around his self-care, like if his self-care includes killing women kind of thing, that he'd have a lack of boundaries around that? Is that's
Well, the lack of boundaries things, I think like, well, his Saturn's in Cancer up in the 12th, and then he's got all that stuff in the 4th house. So you talk about boundary issues, like, well, definitely, yeah, 100% this dude's got boundary issues. And so Ketu is just like there's no boundaries, and Mars is going to penetrate boundaries, and Sun will do the same.
and it's in Scorpio energy.
Yeah, and it's all in Scorpio energy, and the moon is there debilitated, and Ketu, Mars, and Moon all thinking he's the great hero. That's sort of where Moon is a little bit debilitated in Scorpio as well. It's that emotional, wants to be the emotional hero in a sense. Um, or they feel like they're the hero, but they're not really sort of idea with the moon and alone in Scorpio anyways. Or in Jesta. So yeah, and then I think there's that, well, there's that sort of master slave dynamics in his home, that the authority between the guards and the prisoners, for example. And then he's got it sort of all backwards, because I think even in jail, he sort of like always felt like the big man in the house kind of idea. And maybe the people in prison were scared of him as well. And he's probably very manipulative and very good that way. So maybe even in his home, maybe he is the big man's son in his home. I'm not sure what his prison life was like, but he was a pretty crafty dude. I'm sure he could manipulate a bunch of prisoners, no problem. Um, and he was so much into all those master slave dynamics as well and all of that. So here's the chart of the true sadist, I guess, in a sense. And so we see that Maga gives a really strong sense of purpose in his ascendant and that sort of thing, some sense of childlike wonder. And so there's a bit of a child inside of him. And then that energy is going into the 4th house. And so, well, his home life growing up was very violent. There was no boundaries to him. Probably had some really brutal stepfathers because of the Mars Mercury sort of thing. And so he really grew up probably in that master slave dynamic, and the adults being the power people in the room. And the Saturn up in the 12th house like that, well, when he was younger, he just wanted to get away and stay away. And so he'd probably go off and hide sometimes, or a lot of times kind of locked in the room, probably as a child. And that comes out as going to jail later in life. The Saturn, in this case, it rules his 6th house and his 7th house, but certainly that 6th house rulership going up. And so Saturn in Cancer, generally speaking, is providing like cold, hard comfort. And so that cold, hard comfort then is that's in the back of his mind somehow all the time. It's this coldness that sort of holds him back, doesn't let him get out in a sense. It doesn't allow for any sort of flow, no proper flow of hormones, that's for sure in this chart. Hormone system's completely shot. And then I would say actually the nervous system here is also completely shot. So so there's that. Now that I say that, I wonder if there isn't some dynamic in Anuradha Nakshatra of the relationship between the hormone, the watery system of Scorpio, and the nervous system of the fiery system of the nervous system. It's not if there isn't some kind of relationship between that, if there's not almost a large imbalance between these two systems that generally has to get along inside of us somehow. So anyway, so that's just, yeah, there's Ted Bundy, man. I should return to some of these charts, but anyways, there's Ted Bundy in a nutshell, kind of a brutal dude. And this is, why do I have him? Oh, that's his son, so okay, that's why. Sun in fourth house. What else do you get? I imagine a lot of these people wouldn't have had very nice home lives. Woody Allen, I don't think a lot of that master slave dynamics. I think that even comes up in his movies and things like this. Some of that sadomasochism and well, the controversy. He kind of married his daughter, an adopted daughter, so it's not like he's totally breaking the rules, but that sun maybe also really highlighting a lot of sort of taboo type stuff and taboo relationships, maybe in Sun and Anuradha. Highlights, shines a light on the master slave, shines a light on those imbalances. And that's certainly what Biden has done, and they've done with racism and some of these things, is they've really sort of used those imbalances, shine a light on that to get power in a sense. So that's kind of an interesting way to see all this as well. God, so many powerful people with the sun and Anuradha. It almost seems like it almost seems like the sun is kind of exalted in Anuradha in a way. Like, look at all these powerful people. Look at all the power that's in this position. So it's almost like this hidden, well, it's this hidden power is what it is.
Well, I mean, it's like it's like I think all of these. I don't know about a lot of these stories, but like if we look at like Samwise or Joe Biden's stories, right? Like they became big by writing someone else's kind of thing. So it's like I'd be curious, like who these people kind of rode to get to that point, kind of thing. Because like Samwise didn't make the choice; he followed the hero, and then he ended up being able to shine just as brightly.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It almost seems like it's like the sun is really, really powerful here, but it's not dignified at all. In a sense. So there's the power there. So when you get it in Aries where it is exalted, it's powerful and usually kind of dignified in a sense. There's some dignity there, some nobility to it in a sense. And here a lot of that, it's like the sun is really, really powerful, but he's kind of working down in the mud in a sense. He's highlighting those differences in a sense. He's not bringing the unity. And so
it's like hard to see an identity with these people, whereas like the sun in Aries, you see the identity, you see who the person is, but in this case, you kind of just see a brightness underlying in a way.
yeah, and it's hidden how they got that power. And sun is a power. We have to remember that. So it's that really that hidden power somewhere to the throne. And I don't know, are all of these people puppets? Let me just look at the whole list of them again here. That sounds like what we're getting at, right? I can't imagine Suleiman the Magnificent was a puppet, but who knows? Maybe he was also acting under a more powerful interest somehow. But maybe some of these people are the puppet masters as well. Master of puppets. Have to see if any Metallica guys have these placements. Because that is a kind of like, we look at the powerful imbalances that exist in Anuradha. And so it's also the master slave. That's what the master, that's what the sadist is doing. They're puppeteering the masochist and manipulating him and kind of making them do what they want to do. The masochist in their own way is doing the same to the sadist. And so both people are sort of playing that game, trying to manipulate by doing everything or trying to manipulate by not recognizing, or giving you inconsistent recognition for what you've done. It's kind of how the sadist works, like a slot machine. Exactly like a slot machine. So I imagine there would be a chance for a lot of addictive tendencies here as well then. Through that. Well, that's what that sadomasochist relationships are. What are they? that codependence is same. It's an addictive thing. And so that's where Mitra, that's where the good friendships fall out of balance when it becomes a codependent relationship. It's not an equal friendship anymore. And so we'll see a lot of that in Anuradha, I'm sure. It's all over. There we go. Sun in the 5th house of Anuradha. What are we at now? Oh, we're doing probably the same we're doing for time every other time we go. So we're doing all right. Do you notice any difference in the sound quality to listen to me? No? Okay.
Maybe a bit, maybe a bit.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, you sound maybe a little closer, like just a little stronger in a way.
Yeah. Okay.
But I'm also like the wrong person to ask. Like I'm not big on, but yeah, like like to me, like between 50% and 100% is 100% for me.
Yeah, I
Kind of
hear you.
thing.
I
Yeah.
hear you. You got a bunch of Shravan placements. You should have a good ear. What's going on, man?
So if I want to, yes, but typically I just leave it off. Like that detachment is there. But yeah, like when I listen to music, like I can find the small subtleties and go with it.
Yeah.
But yeah, right now, like the quality of your voice isn't what's important now. It's the meaning of your words, right? So I focus
Yeah.
on that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So where are we now? Let's
Because like I'm not like like some like I don't have enough Virgo placements to like be finicky about the details. I'm just like, oh, like what's important here is that I understand what he's saying, not that his voice is crisp. So I disconnect from that because I don't want to get frustrated about it.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I guess. Yeah. Yeah. He's not here to sound good. He's here to just give me ideas. Oh, that's fair. Okay.
But if you want me, I'll tell you that you sound good.
Yeah, anyways, $200 headphones. I was wondering if they're doing any better. They fit over my hearing aids. That's what I kind of like.
It's good. Usually you want like a better sound quality on the reception end, right? When you're getting nice headphones, like I don't think that like the mic, I feel as soon as you're paying like more than $100 for a headset, like the mic will be just as good kind of thing, like a $500 headset or $100 headset. I think those, I don't know.
Maybe. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't, but I thought I would. Yeah, I'll bump my.
Yeah, it sounds good.
Yeah,
Doing good.
perfect. If you're happy, I'm happy. Um, where do we go here?
Yeah, I'd be curious about the 10th house on Anuradha's actually.
What about 10? Oh yeah, there's a sun. 10th house. Badrachan Baba Shukrashwar. Oh, interesting. This was like a 90-year-old Baba I met when I was down in Shuklashwar. All the Shuklashwar people are the ones I know, but he was like this 90-year-old Baba. Trying to figure out how he was regulating energy. Suleiman the Magnificent. Billy Idol, Woody Allen, Johnny Versace, Shankar Sharma. Oh, he was another he wasn't regulating energy. Shankar Sharma, he was in charge of all the irrigation actually in his area, a big farming area. And so he was the one who he owned all the pipes. And so he was basically the regulator of the flow of water to people who bought his water, kind of thing. Yeah, he was the big irrigation guy. So that's kind of an interesting way in his career, getting involved with that. And I wonder, Anuradha, I should look and see if it has any connection with Balarama, who's also one of the underground guys. And so when you're trenching, you're kind of regulating the flow of things, or when you're building a road, That's what you're doing. You're regulating the flow. You're putting a nice tarmac down so things can go. And that's where the energy is going to flow, where you put the road or where you put the channels or that kind of thing. So kind of an interesting way to see that as well. Yeah, it's amazing. Just every one of these sun and Anuradhas, doesn't matter where the sun is, it seems to be a lot of power. This is 11th house, and so this is, well, the friendship of Mitra piled on to the friendship of 11th house, and so these people will have very, very powerful friends somehow. No doubt Jack Welch was fully connected. He was General Electric. He was like really regulating his whole life. He made a fortune from regulating power, right? Put it through a thin line and there's your toaster, and put it through a heavier line. And really it was, yeah, his whole career was built on regulation of power. So Lucky Luciano, he was regulating the flow of booze in a big way, and that kind of thing, and probably also a lot of power. I imagine he had a lot of say on a few of the mayors that got in or something like that. And also that sense of like the hidden friend. And that was probably Lucky Luciano, the friend, that hidden sort of friend in the background in certain ways. And so up in the 12th house, well, there's going to be some kind of losses through this sun and some kind of losses to power. Whereas you're rolling the 9th and going in the 12th. So I'd expect this to be quite a mystical spiritual placement. So you get a couple popes that have it. It's kind of interesting. Jimi Hendrix, very way out there sort of spiritual placement. But I think Howie Mandel also had a kind of strange, like, for his time, he was like a yogi back in the day, the strange sort of goofy motivator in a sense. He was a maybe great coaching energy as well in this Anuradha. That coach, come on, you got it. One more. Yeah. And that was kind of Howie Mandel's thing. That was really, he was really big on that kind of way of going. Virtue is more to be feared than vice because its excesses are not subject to the regulation of the conscience. And so that's where we get like modern virtue signaling, basically. So we need to regulate our virtues. That really needs to be done today, but that's some of that moon and Anuradha, I think. It's some of that sense of like moon and Anuradha is often, it's like the energy is holier than thou. They're usually very straight, and they really they often think quite highly of themselves. And again, it's that Deva influence. It's that sort of, what was it, dharmic influence, and so doing what's right and sacrificing to do what's right. But I think maybe Moon and Anuradha, let's skip down to the names here. But I think that's going to be a bunch of virtue signalers. It's part of that debilitation. So some maybe. Narendra Modi, that's certainly how he got power. I don't know. I don't know if I'd fully call them virtue signalers. Woody Harrelson's not really like that. But I imagine a lot of these. Let's pop Woody Harrelson's chart. I don't know what he's doing these days, but I always kind of liked him. So he had no time giving, so I'm just doing my best with this kind of stuff. I think I put this Mercury in the Ascendant because especially he's always like, his personality, he's like the eternal kid. He's very youthful and sort of immature in the way he is. His personality is that little boyishness. Where's his Anuradha? The
I
moon.
feel Yeah, I feel there's a lot of people that look like him. So I feel like that if we find someone else that looks like him, like that, like he's kind of got this like somewhat of a Scorpio ascending look, where he's got that like conniving kind of evil eyes look and like crazy smile thing going on. So it could make sense for Gemini too.
Yeah, well, this is Mercury and Ardra Nakshatra. Yeah, that's a Gemini. He can change his face to a certain degree. All the face, the confidence in the face with sun there, a lot of light in his eyes, a lot of enthusiasm and that sort of stuff in his speech. And then it's that moon that goes debilitated, so that brings some of that sort of darkness that he might have in the way he looks. I don't know if he think he does have some teeth problems and things like that as well, or something like different, like gaps in his teeth or something like that. Or his smile was kind of always a little bit weird. Um, but then there's that Anuradha.
Where do you see that when you're looking at the
Oh
Rahu? Or
no, I'm looking at the sun in the second house, and then moon is debilitated. So the second house is debilitated. That's all the face and the smile and the teeth. But where it really clinches the tooth problems is the Saturn's aspect. Usually when Saturn has anything to do with the second house, there's some tooth problems, especially if the second house isn't in good shape. And so I really see that mostly in the teeth, I think. Whereas the eyes, for example, sun is there. So I'm thinking there's going to be a lot of like light in his eyes and his vision might stay fairly good, but Saturn's aspecting. So as he ages, it'll come down a bit, but I don't think huge deal. But then the sun is like sometimes I say sun rolls the right eye and the moon rolls the left eye. And so the moon is debilitated and yeah. And the second house is debilitated. So there should be some problems with vision as well, I would think. Uh but I get a sense it's gonna because of the Saturn and a few things. I don't know, I just think it's gonna hit his mouth
I
more than
think he does play a blind man in a movie or two.
oh, does he?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, that's interesting. So yeah, there is all that sort of there as well. Um, but yeah, he might have vision problems. Certainly his left eye is maybe worse than his right or something like that. Where do we go here? Yeah, oh, that moon and Anuradha debilitated. And so this is going to cause a bunch of problems, sort of digestive problems and things like that. Uh, give a lot of darkness. He's probably actually a little bit also, you think of him as a nice boy, but he's probably also a little bit into these sort of master slave dynamics, and he likes to have power over people to a certain degree, I would imagine. Um, so that moon's it's quite a dark in the sixth house like that. It's going to be there's going to be emotional problems there. A lot of emotional sort of darkness and heaviness, kind of going on in that way. And then that'll probably also affect, well, the hormones are also affected in this case, and he might have like something like a hypothyroidism as well to a certain degree, because we're seeing that second and third house are sort of, well, second's debilitated, then Mars and Rahu going into the third. That's kind of the throat. You can see the hormones are going to be off because the moon is debilitated in sixth house. So you start asking how, and it seems like maybe there's some calcification of the pineal gland. And so it's not regulating the thyroid gland. And because it's Mars Rahu, that makes me think it's hyperthyroidism. And he probably has some nervous system complaints too, the nervous system running hot, because we see the 11th house rules the nervous system. And that Lord is that Mars coming into with Rahu and Leo. And so all of that is going quite a bit of heat there. Certainly a lot of pain and inflammation in his shoulders. Might be that he's got even like a pinched nerve in his upper back or something like that brings some pain and inflammation up in that hands, arms, shoulders, throat areas. But then when we talk about hormone problems, the moon is debilitated, but his Jupiter is also debilitated. And Jupiter rolls over like the growth hormone in the body, and growth hormone in the body basically regulates everything in the body. And so he's got all kinds of issues with the regulation of hormones in his body, I'm sure. Yeah. I can, anyways, so that's what I see in Woody Harrelson's chart there. On the other hand, he has this Jupiter Saturn's conjunct in the eighth house, and that's a conjunction between the 10th lord and the ninth lord and the 10th lord, which brings his Dharma and his karma together. And so a lot of purpose and meaning. It's not a deep meaning because Jupiter's debilitated, but still some deep purpose and meaning is coming through the getting channeled through the eighth house of sudden things and catastrophes and all of that sort of stuff. Hidden power, a lot of hidden power. And that sort of thing. That's Woody Harrelson stuff. It's funny how a lot of these, especially because it's his moon there, what happens is a lot of the typical things we think of Anuradha, they'll come out through the chart everywhere in different ways. And that's really a lot of times the moon nakshatra kind of works that way. Whatever you see from the moon nakshatra, you'll see in the chart in all kinds of different ways. Kind of comes up. So you got Rothschilds, of course, they're regulating the flow of money, really the banking. And again, the money flows and then it kind of, the problem with the greedy rich is when they hold on to their money, it stagnates and it can stagnate a whole economy in a sense, and cause bigger problems to the whole energy system. Dave Grohl is a drummer. I don't know if that's regulating the energy of the band, maybe to a certain degree. Way drummers do. Couple like Rubena Shrati, she was a doctor, but she's still married to her husband, but I don't know, as far as she says her, it's all right, but they don't see much of each other. She went and stayed with a guru actually, and she was that moon, that really devoted friend to the guru, the only person that was there to sort of take care of this, some old baba. And so she took care of him till death, and then Salt sort of took care of everything afterwards. Karen R has certainly played that role as well. When she was young, it was a little bit abusive relationships, but when she was older, she was just that really good friend. Husband had cancer, took care of everything like that. Who else do I know here that's really sort of taken care? Well, Tins Ken has done that as well. She's well, and she's got into, where did she go to live? Like Madagascar. She's like and she's very clear when she's East German. She's not German. She's very, very clear about that. She's from East Germany. But she went and lived in Madagascar and she was kind of doing some work there, through NGO sort of stuff. And so again, these disbalances, even black and white disbalances, there's a lot of like Anuradha is very black and white. I think if we looked at some of the actors and looked at some of their shows, I'm sure they've done some black and white filmography in their days at some point. And that black and white light would probably do very good on them. Warren Buffett, I don't know how much of his money, disaster capitalism, that's the word I was looking for earlier. How much of Warren Buffett's money has been made off disaster capitalism. It's interesting we talk about capitalism, and there's Adam Smith, also with this sort of moon and Anuradha positions. The invisible hand he was writing about, I think that was Adam Smith, writing about the invisible hand of the marketplace. And in some ways, that's what the Anuradha is. It's that invisible hand in the hero's quest, or that, that invisible hand that's sort of helping other people get by in a lot of ways. Ram Dass kept a lot of his partners invisible to a certain degree. Just seeing a lot of that sort of invisible hand stuff here as well on the moon. And so that's also that friend where some invisible hand sort of opens a portal for us, or some invisible hand in the marketplace. But I look at someone like Erdogan in Turkey, and he's fighting against this sort of invisible, anyways, he calls it the Gulenists. And they're sort of this invisible hand that seems to be working in Turkey. And some say nobody can see it but Erdogan himself. And so you get a bit of that craziness as well, that sensitivity. Too sensitive to what's going on beneath the surface is really what happens with Moon and Scorpio, why it's debilitated. So it's always reacting to these things nobody else sees. It's reacting oftentimes to this invisible energy, and nobody sees it. And so like, you're completely crazy. And they're like, no, really, I can feel it. It's there. Yeah. So yeah, that comes out in different ways through the different nakshatras. So let's zoom ahead past Moon. Get to Mars. Here's the nitty-gritty. So in the early part of their life, they might be more restricted and that sort of thing. And so it's a lot of times that work or sort of fighting against that restriction that will make the Anuradhas more free in the later and more they kind of want to, they might not tell people what their goal is as well. These Anuradhas, Justice can be that way as well. Not really telling people what they're up to. And Mars is activity, and so it's actual physical activity. And so like any kind of resistance training is very good. I even think of my yoga now. It just came. I just realized this actually. My yoga practice. I practice kind of Shivananda style of yoga, and this is sort of, it's somewhat similar to yin. You hold the postures for a really, really long time, but they're not these sort of lazy yin postures that you're holding. You like go into the shoulder stand, for example, and what I'm trying to do, and it's talking Mars and Scorpio generally here, but it's that resistance. It's like I get into the position and I hold it for as long as I can, but it's like full power and hold it. And I'm going to try to be really steady. And for me, I'm trying to keep a really steady, smooth flow of breath as well and keep that ready, steady. And well, it depends where I am in my yoga practice. If I'm just like coming back to it again, I don't care too much about the flow of my breath. I go through all the motions and keep going through that until, okay, now I can start to control my breath. But when I've got the really good practice, basically as soon as I start losing my nice breath, that will be when I come out of the posture kind of idea. And so you're holding it as hard as you can. And it's usually a lot of tension and a lot of like, you're trying to keep that stress response from triggering as well. You're kind of right on the edge. And so basically, as soon as you start losing a flow of your breath in those postures, that's when the stress response is kicking in. And so I come out of it again and I let myself relax. It's like that's when I've crossed the line, as soon as the breath breaks in a sense. But it's a lot of like really tough resistance training. And so you might be very good at that kind of training as well in a similar way. So here's your brothers, Mao and Stalin and Dorsey and the Virgin Mary and that sort of thing. And one of the things I talked about, some of that holier than thou attitude of these sort of nakshatras as well. And you could see they're above reproach in their actions in some sense with these people. Not that I'm pointing any fingers.
No, I smile because I've always felt dictator energy in me, and this is the placement I think that has that energy. So
Yeah, and so if we look at some of these, like your Mars again, we talked about the Ruchakya yoga. Actually, your Mars becomes that pure Ruchak yoga as well, and it's the only like what makes it even more powerful. It's the only planet in this whole central part of the chart. So your whole inner being is really that Mars in Anuradha Nakshatra, and that regulating and being able to regulate your energy as well. But then that comes into, in a sense, this is it's an interesting placement in your chart because you're the Purvabhadra ascendant. So that's all about the power and the electricity as well, sort of idea. And that's who you are. But then you get this really powerful Mars in your 10th house and what you do. And so the Rachakya yoga isn't like my Rachakya yoga is in the ascendant. So it's much more about like that's much more about who I am, is that Mars and the great hero questing and all of that sort of thing. Where your Mars goes into that's what you do. It's not so much who you are, but what you do is your job is to be the good friend. Anyways, your Saturn, you can see it in their chart because your ascendant Lord Saturn goes into the 11th house as well. And so that also makes like really old friends and solidifies a lot of that for you as well. But in a way it becomes Mars is like it's the job to be this powerful Rachakya, this powerful energy regulator. And you have to put a lot of effort because Mars is ruling your 3rd house. And this energy isn't like it's not natural to an Aquarius person. It's kind of it's not a pleasant energy for an Aquarius person. Mars is it's tough, man. It's hard to regulate. Maybe that's the danger that comes in with your job and things like that as well, because it's quite a tough job of regulation you have to do that way. But then we get this like, geez, in your chart, the friendship aspect's getting doubled up as well because Mars rules the 3rd house, which is well, it's friends as well in the 3rd house, a little bit, and usually the closer friends, the team, the group. So maybe in your work, you're regulating crews as well and that sort of thing. So anyways, quite the powerful leader. And maybe you don't like, I don't know, if you're training some younger kids or something, maybe you don't take well to stupid questions. Sort of thing, a little bit too powerful, a little bit, anyways, quite strong. And you don't have, ultimately, you don't have Jupiter or Venus directly aspecting your Mars to take some of that hot edge off of you. So the heat is quite pure. Whereas we look at someone like Joseph Stalin's chart, and I'm sure we're not going to have a good birth time. Yeah, conflicting dates, conflicting times, everything's conflicting in Stalin's chart. So we have to take any of this with a grain of salt. But his Mars is going into that 11th house, and so that's I think really where that disaster capitalism sort of happens. He makes profit and gain from the destruction of the local cultures in a sense. That's that Mars transforming because it's in the 8th house from the. We can do this in your chart where it's 8th house from, but here it's the 8th house from the 4th, and so he really transformed the local cultures, and he did. He moved whole cultures around USSR so he could. Anyways, just trying to regulate everything in his own way. And then here, I think that Mars in his 11th house was probably like friendships with kind of secret police. Ketu's also aspecting it. Ketu's part ruler of Scorpio as well. And so I think there was like that close friendship with the secret police, with sort of KGB sort of characters, army guys were like, these were his contacts, his network.
And Pusha is the police, isn't it as well? Like it's the nakshatra for like the blue collar police, like an SS kind of army kind of thing.
It can be, yeah, it is sort of that local protection force, yeah. It's also ruled by Saturn, so it is that regulation, that regulator as well, the regulator of the local cultures and customs. A lot of times, like social law, you could say is Puchya. But local law and stuff. So yeah, you're getting it quite strong. And he was famous for his whole network of spies. And so you really see that with that Ketu aspecting Mars up in the 11th like that. So very, very interesting. And then it ends up in the 3rd house from his moon. And so that's even the small group that he was hanging around with too, as his sort of inner circle was also all kind of spies and military men. these really dry meetings at Saturn in his third house here as well. Long, dry, watery, yeah. So, and very cold, hard, dry mentality. Saturn's aspecting the moon. It's cooling the waters of Pisces. It's aspecting the moon, and so cooling all the emotional aspects. But he still has this powerful, hot kind of Mars. So, and then he's well, the big thing I guess in his chart really is that, well, it's two things. It's Jupiter, Rahu, and his ascendant. So Rahu and the ascendant really makes someone feel like they're someone special. They can get away. They can do things other people can't. And so that sort of plays into the sort of sadistic sort of qualities.
Put
Rahu's
Jupiter there too. Just expand even more, right?
yeah, well, that's the ideology that sort of gets like, this is the correct ideology and the communist ideology. And so it was very practical, uncaring. There's no love or anything in his ideology that way. It's just really kind of cold and hard. And again, it's kind of what I say about communism is it works on the very sort of small scales, but he was trying to run it in the big scales. And so he was taking this ideology of Jupiter and using it in the wrong way, in a sense, hyperizing a very, yeah, a very practical ideology that's much better used in the small scale. But he had no vision for the small scale. That Ketu in Cancer, that Mars ruling fourth house going in the eighth from the fourth. And so when it came to any of those local cultures, he didn't even see them. He was trying to just apply this communist on the you could say on the more global cultures in a way, where his moon is in the ninth house and all that stuff is in Sagittarius. And so he was globalizing what should have been a local energy. And so that's that Ketu. Mars can usually regulate energy very nicely in Scorpio, but Ketu's aspecting it. And so there's no actually proper gatekeepers. There's no proper regulation of that power. And so you can become dictator. We'll look at Mao's because I'm sure Mao is going to have something similar. I don't imagine we have a good birth time for Mao either, but I'm pretty good at making things up, as you can see. Okay, so I ended up putting in the time Astrosage uses. Astrosage, they do a bit of rectification on through the Astrosage. They've got all kinds of articles and stuff like that. And I generally trust the Astrosage rectifications way more than Barbara Pujan's rectifications. Way, yeah, you've got, it's like, yeah, professionals and the kids. That Anuradha imbalance between um Barbara Pujan and Astrosage. So this was the time they used, so I can accept this. I guess maybe he's got Mars and same as, yeah, there we go. Same as Stalin, Mars in the 11th. And so that network of sort of secret police. In his case, he's got Rahu aspecting it. And Mercury's there. Mercury's Mercury's maybe a little bit dangerous there because it's much more strategic than Stalin. Stalin was just kind of this Ketu sort of unregulated power in a sense, where Mars or Rahu is regulating, but it's intensifying the regulation. It's almost intensifying the Mars energy through the regulation, and then Mercury's there to give it sort of a strategy to it all. So it becomes quite a powerful military strategician in Mao's case, I would say. Or certainly a lot of his friends would be that way, and he made a lot of gain through that as well. But here, if we look from the moon, then his moon is in a Celestia. It's not, was it Stalin? Where's his moon? Oh, his moon was in Hasta, where the Iron Fist kind of guy, Stalin. Whereas Mao Zedong is more the secret kind of the snake in the grass kind of dictator, you could say. Not quite so in your face. he's got, Mao was in the beginning, well, he was kind of a freedom fighter as well. He kind of led his people to freedom as well. And so that's that Jupiter and Kritika, an ideology that's freedom, but it's a condemned to be free. And so maybe his Saturn aspecting that Jupiter has sort of, anyways, brought a harsher, darker aspect to the freedom that he brought to his people. But I think he's generally seen as a hero and a revolutionary in a lot of circles still. And I'm not sure just how much, like when I look at his chart, I'm not sure how much he was an evil guy and how much he was demonized from our media in a lot of ways, because Stalin looks like a pretty evil guy, and I'll admit that. Because Stalin's not very smart. He was kind of a dumb bully in a sense. Where Mao Zedong's actually quite smart, quite intelligent in a lot of ways. And there's some spiritual aspects to Mao's chart as well, the Ketu and the ninth house, and so not a strong sense of personal identity. Except the one that's maybe made up through his Venus, the one that was crafted for him and put on posters, I guess. But him himself probably didn't have a really super strong sense of personal identity. He got that from the party, and that was all Mao. Maybe that's that Rahu in third house, is all that hyper focalization on the party. The party is always right. And I think maybe with Mao, it wasn't so much about him as it was about the party. Where Stalin, I think, let's look back at his chart here. Where Stalin has that Rahu there, it was all about him in a lot of ways. So there's our different emphasis, different dictators, I guess, different ways to dictate. But again, that Mars and Anuradha is still always going to be playing with those really big imbalances, the master slave balances. And I wonder if this Mars ruling the fourth house going into the 11th, both of these people were known to make a lot of money off the backs of their peasants. And so the money they made from agriculture and those sort of master slave dynamics maybe coming into play with this Mars in the 11th. And in a way, when you think like construction bosses as well, and it's really harsh to say master slave dynamics, but really strong sort of hierarchies in a sense, right? Where you've got someone, the captain, right? And he's kind of running everything. In a sense, there's a power imbalance, but very necessary power imbalance was because, well, I know something and I have experience and I have it. On your case, it's probably like I'm the guy with the ticket, in a sense. And so it's like at the end of the day, like I'm the guy with the ticket. I'm the boss. So, we're just getting to Mars in the first house, and here I've been chatting about him in all these other places. But again, I would think this Mars in the first house would be quite powerful because it's through Chuck Yog. That's so you get Patrick Waugh, who's a powerful athlete. Kim Kardashian. Well, Kim Kardashian, she's someone, she was actually a personal helper for some famous person at first. And then that person opened a door for her, and now there's Kim Kardashian's Kim Kardashian. It's funny, you see those old pictures when she was that personal assistant. Yeah, she was a personal assistant to another famous person. Yeah, interesting. And then they open the door, and so there's all that. Very, very Anuradha influences there, definitely. Patrick Waugh, I'm not sure how that works out. I don't think he had a good birth time, so I'm not sure if that's his chart. That might be a very sort of quick rectification that I made. Oh, but he's certainly trying to regulate the flow of the puck. You know who Patrick Waugh is, right? Okay, yeah. We should mention that he's a hockey goaltender because, again, I'm talking to a very local audience, but I've got a lot of the people listening to this will be very international, so they won't know Patrick Waugh. Oh yeah, it shows an AA rating, so there we go. should be a good chart for Patrick Waugh, hockey goaltender. One of the great hockey goaltenders, won a lot of like World Cup hockeys, and he was MVP and won a lot of awards. The award system, you see 11th house. And so the sun there, and so best MVP type sort of things, awards, but certainly good for awards, especially conjunct the Lord of the 11th. And I wonder if that's not like awards for playing games, really, is what Mercury is, games and things like that.
I have Mercury in the 11th, and I get awards for games.
Okay. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, very consistently.
Okay. So that's pretty interesting. So we'll get that sort of thing. And then the sun. And so it's like, well, he's the best one at the game, kind of idea that way. And then I think he's often, maybe he must have been a captain of his team at some point. But certainly that sun there is giving him these big,
He was a coach, wasn't he?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, he became the coach after, maybe. Yeah. But big fan clubs and the central figure of these massive sort of groups. And even on the ice, it's like there's something, got the center ice person, but then there's the goaltender who almost seems to get more attention. Like he's always there on the ice and things like that. Goaltender's kind of this alone person, separate from the team, like a friend to the team in a sense. Goaltenders have an interesting position in hockey or in sports generally. Because in a way, they're not part of the team. The whole team is up there working together. They've got the back for the team. When the team falls apart, then it lands on the goaltender's shoulders kind of idea. So that's kind of an interesting thing. But that Anuradha and the Sun, and I'm also looking as Mercury, like Mercury, Sun. Oh no, I was confused for a second. But certainly that Mars and the Ascendant will really, really be powerful. Wonder how much he was thought of as a risk taker, kind of crossing the line. With the puck, maybe he's one of those guys that like to play the puck a little bit too. But anyways, quite a strong, but his Chakra Yoga again, it's sort of it's dulled off by that Ketu. And so the Ketu is actually a nice spiritual. It doesn't give him a very strong sense of personal identity, kind of weakens it, but maybe a lot of that personal identity stuff is going into his third house where his moon is. He's comfortable with the team, with the crowd, with that really a team player in a sense, in another way. But in a sense, the goaltender's job also, I'm saying, to like when the team falls apart. So it's like after the catastrophe and everything falls apart, it comes up to the goaltender to maybe clean things up to a certain degree. So,
And you can kind of tell how a game went as well when you look at the goaler stats. Like if the goalie's got like 100 saves, well, you know how terrible the defense was, right? So he regulates kind of how the game goes by his stats, right?
yeah, that's very true as well. Yeah. Yeah. So, and then there's the coaching thing, and he's probably worked with like Big Brothers or Sisters or Make-A-Wish Foundation type stuff, open doors for a lot of people and probably changed a lot of people's lives as well. The same. Oh, that's what Patrick Waugh was the master of. He had the leg thing where his legs were open, the door was open, and then he would close it. So he would, yeah, it was kind of an interesting thing. Yeah. So there we go that way. Simone de Beauvoir. So very sexy. The women that have this are usually like Simone de Beauvoir. She was kind of known for her sex appeal before she was supposed to. Kim Kardashian as well. Very sexy. And so Mars and Scorpio, especially for the women, that sex appeal is going to come out very, very strong. But the men as well are going to be sexy somehow as well. They're going to have a strong, because that Mars and Scorpio, what it does is gives that like that underground energy. And so even if they're sort of a plain looking person, they have this energy that they give off. That's like a lot of like anyways, a lot of mystery, and a lot of times that mystery people think, oh, there's sex, some a lot of sexual energy there. So that was that's Mars in the ascendant that way, very strong in that regards. Mars in the second house. It's interesting. This is my family's got a lot of Mars and Scorpio energy actually here, and so I got a couple cousins with their Mars and Scorpio second house, and they've actually both one cousin and anyways, but they both sort of sacrificed a lot for their family. They're really good friends. They really stand by people. Especially Taurus had a really difficult sort of marriage and really stood by his partner for the broader family, but really standing by the partner in a lot of ways. What else we got going on with that? Let's pop open David Frawley's chart, because I've talked about him a few times. I don't know if we've looked at his chart yet or not. Yeah, I'm gonna have to speed this up pretty quick too, because we're coming up 3 hours on our time. And I don't know if the crowd can see, but it looks like Emmett got cut off here. But we come to David Frawley's chart, and he's the I'm sure you've all read books by him. He's got some nice books on Ayurvedic astrology seers, and some stuff like that. And they're all right. So this is AA rating, so this must be who he actually is. And this might be correct. Very powerful splitting energy, and I don't know if this was his very agreeable to the masses. Party affiliations by maybe. And then his Mars in second. What are we looking at? Yeah. So he's got Mars in the second house, and so that looks like a what you got with that. So that's going to be a really good sort of position and a lot of secret money, hidden wealth. Of course, there's going to be probably hidden payments as well, because Mars can bring like big money in a kind of a lump sum sort of idea, wealth through partnerships, through contracts. But there's something here. It's not in a great position from the seventh house, right? It's the eighth from the seventh. Anytime the seventh lord is going into the second house, it usually brings a lot of anyways, the partner ends up having a lot of secrets and things like that. And so maybe that's David Frawley. Maybe he did have a partnership that had a lot of sort of secrets, and maybe part of the reason he's supporting the Hindu nationalists and all that sort of stuff the way he has is because they've got some manipulation on him. Because this Mars is quite heavily afflicted, actually. Saturn's aspecting, Rahu's aspecting. There's no redeeming aspects to it. And so his Mars is in a bit of difficult shape. And so even his wealth-wise, there would be problems. I'm looking at this, and I hate to question the birth time of someone who's considered sort of a great astrologer, but sometimes I wonder if these sort of great astrology people don't purposely give out an incorrect birth time because they've got some fear. But anyways, what I want to do to support his fear would also support his chart, because it's one of the things Saturn in the 12th house does. It gives a lot of sort of subconscious fears and things like that. And that fear sort of holds a person back. So anyways, I'm not really sure how that's affected Frawley. I don't know a lot about him other than his books, which I don't consider great books. And maybe that's also it. Maybe that Mars, that's oh, that's interesting. Maybe that relates to a lot of his books being ghost written, actually. And a lot of his knowledge being written by friends or students. These kind of things, that strong imbalance. And so these people that know something write a book and they put his name. Anyways, there's a lot of sort of that imbalance there. So we get to Mars in the third. One of the things with Mars in the second is it might be regulating food intake. Food wants to regulate speech, might weaponize the regulation of food and speech and a lot of that sort of thing. Certainly the weaponization of the regulation of wealth, transforming. What are they doing? Transforming things, transforming wealth. I had a sense these people might have in their storage, right? Because that's storage in the second house. And so a lot of sort of fiery things, symbols and images of friendship, maybe to a certain degree. But I think there is at some point there was sort of a deal with the devil and David Frawley's chart. Yeah. And so that's that imbalance and that all of that sort of thing. The flow of the sphincters, the flow of the lights, flow of the throat. We think glandular hormonal things there as well will come to play. I'm not sure if he would have the same. Was it Woody Harrelson that we said? Yeah. So I'm not sure if David Frawley would have the same severe glandular problems because well, his second lord is strong. It's not debilitated like the Harrelson thing. And then the third lord of the throat. Yeah, make very nice for speaking, very nice for his books. Very lots, it shows lots of productivity. But maybe he's just the guy behind the throne in a sense because of Saturn, Ketu. There's a few things I'm questioning in his chart. He's kind of a born again sort of character, changed his religion, changed his whole spirituality. And so I wonder if that's not going to be a symbol of this Mars when he's in the first. Some of these people haven't been born again in some way. I know Al Josa was. Well, you could say Kim Kardashian was born again in a different way, not quite a religious way, but certainly that's a sense of having gone through a gateway and come into another world. And so maybe Frawley that gets that in the second house because he makes a lot of money off it or something up here. Making some money off that. Fighting over money. Some aggression in that. There's a lot of heat and a lot of passion. The voice and the way they speak. They'd be really good speakers, really good kind of coach type speakers as well. And teachers. And yeah, Taurus, I know, is a very good coach type energy. Got a whole like field of kids. Come on, yeah, let's go. You can do it. He's very, very upbeat like that. And I know him too. There's been a couple times in his life where something's happened and really kind of took him to a new place in life. Oscar Wilde, Leeuwenhoek. Leeuwenhoek also, I think he was a little bit Secret Service type stuff. This is fourth house, so spying and internal spy. Jack Dorsey certainly was working with CIA and what was it? Thesis, but then there's another one. I can't remember the name, but he was certainly working with all of that stuff. It's funny, we see this Mars in the fourth house. So Mars is debilitated in Cancer, and so Mars doesn't really like the fourth house. It's too much, basically too much heat in the kitchen in a sense. And then when it's in Scorpio, it becomes very sort of private house and very active at home and this sort of thing. But it's also that home culture and the boundaries, and so very protective of the boundaries and defenses. And so someone like Jack Nicholson, he's also like this good military position actually for this Mars in the fourth. And so you can see the like the military type officers Jack Nicholson's playing, Joseph Stalin is well there as well. A lot of secrets and a lot of activity in the home and things like that as well going on. So I've got a Jeepers, we're only at Mars. Let's jump ahead to Mercury. We'll go through these really quick. In the end here. Beginning of this, I said, and I don't really get Anuradha. I'm feeling I'm really starting to get it and connect to some of these Anuradha places a lot more now. Well, you get the tsunami. That was the 2004 one that really hit Sri Lanka. And so you get these disasters. But again, it's that disaster capitalism thing coming in after. Mercury's always counting. So Mercury would probably be quite connected with things like insurance and counting, analyzing, assessing the disaster, the scope of the damage. A lot of that sort of thing will come in with this Mercury. Again, some revolutionary writing might come through, like Martin Luther sort of idea. Mercury and Giesta. Just kind of looking at some of the girls I know here. I kind of find it interesting sometimes when it's like all girls I know at that position. None of the boys I know have it. Although there's a number of boys, like I should know some people that are like Gordon Lightfoot more or less, and Salman Khan, the actor, even. I should know some people like that. All these sexy tantrics I've met, you'd think I would know some Howard Hughes type characters. He was Playboy was Howard Hughes. I can't remember. Maybe I've got him completely wrong. We think of these imbalances. Maybe there's also that mercurial imbalance, and so it brings the imbalance between students. There's maybe like we see someone like Claude Monet. Is that Monet that had all the really young girlfriends and a bit of controversial sort of relationship life? Things like that. But Mercury's going to be a bit of self narrative as well, that analyzes. So these people might have sort of a self narrative somehow, a transformation, revolution sort of things. I wonder how much Justin Trudeau believes he's starting a revolution. He's probably much more like Lucky Luciano than any other anybody else. It's interesting, especially in that first pada. Oh, we saw a lot of these powerful leaders with how did I get down to Giesta? Sorry, guys. There we go. Mercury. Oh, there we go. Haha. So here we go. Well, now we got Mercury and Anuradha. So I've mentioned some of the things that Anuradha, like Giesta, we were just looking at, is ruled by Mercury, but Anuradha sort of has this extra sensitivity, it seems like, to Mercury, but there's a self-narrative. And so the self-narrative, these people can be a little bit down. It can be like the self-narrative, I need to change everything. That Mercury with Mitra, that talking about friendship, and talking about standing by people and things like this. Anytime Mercury and Mars are connected, there's usually a lot of sort of coordination and that sort of thing. We see some dancers have this. I know some really good yogis have it. We see Jigoro Kano, Judo Man, Gordon Ramsay. Wonder how that fits in the iron. What is he? The Hell's Kitchen, I think they called him. And so maybe that is getting these students in this really hot space in a sense, and pushing them and using his mouth. Maybe you don't know what he's going to say. Maybe he uses his mouth to create a sense of imbalance or something like that. But again, they're going to kind of stand by people pretty close. Funny, there's a couple people that have kind of been involved with the law. Jigo Kano, or he was kind of involved with the police, the judo master man. Yvette is somehow tied up with that as well. Jigoro Kuno, I think he was kind of a Secret Service guy. And Yvette, she's not Secret Service, but something like that sort of idea. Like a Charles de Gaulle, Wade Davis. Wade Davis has been kind of a devoted student, I guess. I wonder if there's some devoted student energy here. He really wrote some beautiful books about his gurus and that sort of thing. I didn't fully get done organizing this. Charles de Gaulle, Indira Gandhi, Brezhnev was for a short time head of a. Oh, that's why I had Indira Gandhi down there. Yeah, okay. Then we get a lot of these existentialist kind of thing. Camus, Dostoevsky. I think that's Saturn. Maybe they're writing about that transformation or writing about that master slave sort of thing, a narrative of those imbalances kind of come into play. But it's almost like, I think it's like, because imbalance is more like a Virgo thing, right? When we get to that Scorpio or the Anuradha imbalances, I think it's when things are really, really pushed to their limits, right? So it's like the really rich and the really poor. And so you get these sort of like completely different. But what happens is a person moves through that from one of those stages to the other. They move through that imbalance with Anuradha. They go from being poor to rich. They go from being rich to poor. And they really get to see a whole new way of being in some way. And so maybe these people are, because sun and moon are very personal, ascendant and very personal. It's very much who they are, but Mercury's kind of a little bit of an impersonal planet. So maybe it's just their writing, their communications on these sort of topics to a certain degree. Wade Davis is kind of looks like he's going to dedicate his retirement years to the cacao leaf, cocoa leaf. Yeah. Or coca leaf, yeah, that one. Coke and cacao, it's like, why do they have to name these things so similar? Everybody really likes both of them, but one's acceptable and the other's not. So we're coming to the end, so we'll scoot past Mercury and jump up to Jupiter and Anuradha. Journalism good, it's controversial by its nature. Assange, we saw a few of these sort of rebel people, rebel ideologies sort of come in. Elon Musk, Julian Assange, Elton John either could sort of have a rebel ideology. Jupiter, and they're regulating knowledge. They regulate the flow of knowledge. So kind of WikiLeaks type stuff, Twitter type stuff. We saw Dorsey, both owners of Twitter of these Anuradha positions like that. Kim Campbell's maybe kind of interesting. So she's a judge in Canada. She was Prime Minister of Canada for like 3 months. And so she was this, like you think of this flow of power, and she was almost like in a way a placekeeper in a sense. She never really was there for long enough to have any real power or any of that sort of stuff, but she kind of held the position to a certain degree. Some of these gurus that I met in India that are connected with Yogi Adityanath and a lot of those political ideological connections. And so that's that power connection, maybe through the Jupiter. Maybe Jupiter is going to be more of a born again in a religious sense, perhaps. We'll see here. It's interesting. Julia Assange, Edward Snowden both have these sorts of positions. Well, there's Hillary Clinton. So I don't know, maybe it's that ideology of imbalance going on here a little bit. Like Edward Snowden, we see him as this revolutionary, but ultimately he worked for CIA at some point. Julian Assange did as well. That's how they were able to get a lot of this knowledge and this information to us. So that's not kind of almost makes me think of deep state, the underground ideology that's sort of running things. Like Hillary Clinton sort of runs that as well to a certain degree. Paula Yates is a big female CEO. It's interesting. It's Jupiter and Anuradha, especially that second pada. It's a lot of women, right? There's only 4 men, 5 men, and the rest are all women. I got some really nice students there. One of my ex-girlfriends is in that list. One of the close students I just saw in Toronto, she just moved to Croatia. Back to Croatia, she's in there. I wonder, you see some really high too, like it's Princess, Maxima, Sarah Ferguson's Duchess, Hillary Clinton's like a princess, Paula Yates is a big CEO sort of person. Jack Walsh, another big CEO, Ed Snowden's kind of untouchable sort of person. A lot of people running finance, that power under the throne. There's at least a couple lawyers here, and so they know all that sort of law, judiciary, justice. Wonder if there isn't some kind of big imbalance of justice being played out in this Jupiter and Anuradha. Thing is, Jupiter and Anuradha is going to be fairly good because it gets along well with Mars, who's the role of the Scorpio side of that thing. But Jupiter's that expansive sort of energy, that energy of hope. And so Jupiter's, maybe that's the Hillary Clinton magic, expanding the imbalances in order to hold on to power and things like that. But I'm not sure. A couple of these people, there's some administrators, and so they might have been a flow involved with the flow of funds and stuff like that, flow of funding to businesses. So again, time. Let's jump ahead to Venus here. Have a click here. So now we got that Venus. Venus almost becoming the gatekeeper. Venus becoming that source of taking people into another world. And so that's relationship wise. Again, there's going to be some secret relationships and things like that. Venus and Anuradha. Usually quite a sexual placement, but can give a lot of imbalances in relationships and things like this. Joe Biden's certainly been accused of that sort of thing. Kind of, what is it, regulating the flow of pleasure a certain degree. I wonder how much there seems to be some drug addiction here as well to some of these people. Bobby Hall is another great player. But he often worked, he was like the great slap shot. So we always needed someone to sort of, the good friend or someone to set him up for that slap shot. There's Venus, of course, is like peace and things like this. And so it's almost using this Anuradha in a sense. It's a place where people are disarming themselves in a sense, or they're very vulnerable, allow themselves to be vulnerable. And so maybe that's through friendship, somehow they become vulnerable. And let their guards down somehow and get in a bit of trouble. It's interesting. Sonny Barger, the head of the Hells Angels here. Steve Austin, who seems to be like played himself off as that kind of a character. Some fighters like Holyfield, things like this. I guess for men, this Venus would be the women in their life. And so they would probably have quite sexy women who are also probably had some underground power, regulators of energy. These women may be also capable of taking these people into a whole new world. Like Deepak Chopra has had all kinds of, like, I'm told he's like one of the dirtiest famous people when it comes to sex and prostitutes. Sonny Barger, I guess Hell's Angels, I don't know if they ran much prostitution, but I'm sure some of the girls, the club girls, were just like prostitutes as well. They'd be very sexy and very, very devoted. And so these might also be the kind of men that are getting, well, you'd almost think it would be almost like a Venus and Libra. A lot of those Libra themes coming up in this, because of that imbalance sort of situation, but you might get those women who are also imbalanced somehow. But Rumi, his thing, his relationship with Shams, famous for that mystical relationship. And I guess in a way, this Venus in here would have a really strong appreciation for the imbalances. And so I wonder if we wouldn't sort of, like, there's again a lot of that black and white stuff going on in Anuradha. And so I wonder if we wouldn't see some of that sort of thing coming up in relationships between people. Difference in the colors. I'll just do very quickly on Saturn here. We talked about maybe some of the stuck and post-traumatic stress disorders and things like that. Yeah, like a lot of fairly bad people. Sai Baba was always cheating people. William Faulkner, he spent a lot of time in war, actually, a war journalist. Reconciliation. What do we got? Saturn's trying to regulate. So Saturn can be trying to regulate like flows of research. I see people like Peter Smith working on AI and things like that. And I wonder if there's not a certain degree where maybe he's got some patents that restrict other people's research or things like that. Isabel Meyer-Briggs, Meyer-Briggs scale, I think you know of. We see something like Robin DiAngelo, white fragility, really just playing with that massive difference in the people. It's funny, we thought I think it was Jupiter, I thought was going to be a bunch of virtue signalers, or maybe it was the moon, but we seem to be finding that Saturn and Anuradha, they seem to find it's their responsibility to protect and secure from dangers, and Saturn's kind of responsible for the disaster in a sense, and responsible for cleaning it up at the same time. So you find a lot of that sort of disaster capitalism here as well. Some fighters, G.G. Allen. Well, he thought he was born born as the born again recoming of Jesus in a sense. Yeah, and certainly some of these people really thought quite highly of themselves in a lot of ways. This does almost seem to be more dark and dirty and sadistic, some sort of mental health problems most of these people seem to have from one way or another. But it's that fear, really, which I don't know, for someone who sort of feels as free as I do, fear is sort of a very strong mental health problem. I think it's a really great book on yoga, the complete textbook of yoga from the Bihar, the big fat yellow one. Anyways, it's full of philosophy, really beautiful book. Really great book for learning about nakshatras and yoga philosophy, everything. And I think it was in that book, the Swami right off the bat, he said, if you're not happy 100% of the time, you've got mental problems. And so Saturn and Anuradha is going to be like that. It's kind of a curmudgeonly sort of place. They're kind of holding on, and there's a lot of fear and things like that. Now I noticed Dana has this position, and so she just moved on a boat, for example. And so sometimes those fears aren't always unjustified. You've got to have fears, and you've got to be like ultra careful when you're living on I don't know how big the boat is, but a lot of people go and live in like a 23-foot sailboat kind of thing, and they're very small and you don't have much space that way. I just want to see something here. Well, I was just kind of wondering if Dana wouldn't have that Saturn in the fourth house, because that's keeping the safety and security in the home to a certain degree, and some dangers there. And so I thought, well, maybe she's and Anuradha is also watery, and so I thought, well, maybe she's going and living on water. It's interesting, all these last names: H, Daniel H, Brian H, Brian, Bhavani, Bedard, Baba, Bob. Well, so quite a few Babas in here. We see Steve Bubba riding his bicycle around the cyclist motorists, possibility, especially. Yeah, so usually that cyclist motorists, that's that safety coming in on the road, maybe in that regulation of things in the road and the highway. And really the fourth house is things that cover us. That's why it's the home, because home covers and protects us. Same as our clothes covers and protects us. And our car and our automobiles are seen in the fourth house, because that's also something that covers and protects us. The style of our clothes might be seen more in the second house, but the covering and the durability, the quality of them is often in the fourth house. And so I wonder as well if some of these people aren't like Gigi Allen, certainly a black leather jacket kind of guy. I know Daniel H. He's not a bad looking dude like Gigi Allen, but he's got kind of a nice leather jacket. I don't know about Steve Bubba. Maybe when he was younger, I think he had a little bit more style and flair back in the day. You know what happens. I don't want to call him old because he'll get mad at me, but you know what happens when you get old. You lose some of that style and flair. So I'm going to leave it at that. Been a great class. Very happy. Very happy. Anyways, Emmett was able to keep me going and get me going this far, and I was able to hold the torch. So we'll see you next class. I think we will switch up the next classes if you're listening to this. And yeah, so the next class I think we are going to switch ahead. We're going to use this Anuradha portal and transfer ourselves up to Purvashada for my good friend Emmett, who's been making it up to the classes, and he really wants to see that one. So we'll do that class with him in the next class, and then someone will have to remind me to keep me back and get us back on Chak and Jyeshta. But so the next class, so you know, will be Purvashada. Mahadev, I thank you all for coming and tuning in and watching this, and please let me know if you have any questions. And I'm going to plug myself here because some of you might be watching this elsewhere and don't know that I have a website called MikeSleepingDog.com, Instagram and all that, Mike Sleeping Dog. And I do astrology readings regularly and work more with counseling and coaching and that sort of thing with people as well, teaching a lot of philosophy. I'm kind of a spiritual coach more than a what could you say, these sort of career or life coaches, but I have clients as well that I coach them in their education and career as well. So we can do that. So anyways, thank you very much for listening, and Mahadev Har Har Mahadev. Thank you.